Hello. Welcome to the Rational Frontier. This is my friend Dhruv. He is an Indian
Hello.
objectivist, and you're an objectivist, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Broadly speaking, right?
yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, without any qualms.
So, would you say you're a broadly speaking objectivist, or would you say you hold to pretty much all of the tenets?
I'd agree with the broadly speaking part because the problem is, see, Rand tends to make lots of conclusions without getting into critical analysis. Now, the
Mhm.
problem, she makes some of the conclusions she makes are pretty good, but the problem is she gets into this zone where she's making big statements about big things without getting into the nitty gritties, and that's not the right way to do it. For example, I in one particular place I read Rand calls India mystic muck, and I was pretty taken aback by it in Atlas Shrugged, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah.
I did not feel that's the right approach. Of course, mysticism did dominate over individualism, unfortunately, but this does not mean it's a mystic muck as such. Because well, as I think, hopefully, we'll come to the end of this conclusion that yes,
Mhm.
individualism is possible in India too.
Yeah. I think also speaking, what was Atlas Shrugged was in the 50s. So this was the peak of Nehruvianism. So eh, you know, I wouldn't say it's a mystic muck now. Like there is much more free enterprise, there is much more individualism, though there is still a lot
True.
of.
Scope
But
to make. Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
too,
think.
I too pretty much think that compared to the 90s, we live in a beautiful age, and
Oh
we
yeah,
are looking at so many frontiers blooming. And yeah, India will improve by
oh
a
yeah.
lot.
I'm very optimistic, despite everything that's wrong with the country, right? I am very optimistic for the
Same,
next.
same. I too am very optimistic.
Yeah, and so that the statement is defensible back in the 50s. Like yeah,
Yeah.
we're under basically a
And
Soviet
and you
conquest.
also have to give her the benefit of doubt. She's reading colonial era historians who themselves are reading half patchwork kind of history. So and they have an incentive to sell that hey, we are civilizing these people. So
Yeah.
it's everything. And I don't see one. I as a student of history in general, I would like to put it out there that you don't have to agree with everything that a particular person says and everything about everything. It's practically speaking, it's impossible.
Yeah.
The reason is knowledge is created, and there's new knowledge every time. There's new information about a particular thing at any given point in time in history. So
Mhm.
you're supposed to take everything with a pinch of salt and understand time and frame of reference. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing. So according to the objective question, broadly speaking, I'm like that.
Yeah. And I do think, in the dim hypothesis lectures, I might be wrong. Peikoff does like address this. Like I think an Indian objectivist asked them that Rand called India mystic muck in Atlas Shrugged. Do you agree with this? And he said that, well, we are talking about the 50s and historically speaking, but nowadays, with the advent of capitalism, there's a lot of hope. I've seen a lot of Indian objectivists as well. Rand's books sell a lot of in India. So like there is context there. Like she isn't saying it'll
True,
always be right.
true.
Yeah. So, but I agree with you. For example, a lot of uh, you know, uh, let's say Western libertarians and objectivists, they might try to paint colonialism as a good, you know, which I don't agree with because the way I see this is as this is just a government imposing its will on another people, right? And you can say that, let's say, in regions of the world, there might be less developed ethically or technologically and whatever. But the ethical question still stands that are you allowed to, violently coerce those people despite their level of development, right? And so that would be
And
so.
much more than that, I'd also point out one thing. It's even more damaging than that. Really, it's. I wish it was like that. It's it's more. If I were to sum up the colonial era attitude, it's liberal language, illiberal action.
Yeah.
So these are people who are quoting Mill, who are quoting Spencer, who are quoting Locke, who are quoting Voltaire. These all giants of individualism and philosophy. And what they are doing is they're imposing like some ridiculous amount of regulation on establishing Indian businesses. They are cutting off trade supplies. They're doing all these things that like a diehard communist will do, and
Yeah,
they're doing it in the name of capitalism. So what that has caused is that has caused the brand name to like go
yeah,
down significantly.
exactly. And if you are saying that, okay, these colonial powers, they were capitalists, well, I would just say they're mixed economies, and the mixture was much more, you know of course, in their own home countries as well, they did socialism. Britain did. The US was not really colonial, you can say, but at least far less colonial than the British were. But
True,
in
true.
the in the home country, there was a little bit of a little bit of socialism, but in the colonies, it was top down command structure communism, right?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Exactly. And so, for example, in India, right, the Tatas, they were trying to set up their industrial capacity, and that they were, physically stopped from doing so, right? Like there were regulations and taxes and everything, preferential trade treaties imposed upon them, so that India must not be able to develop its own industrial base, so that it remains only, at the level of resource harvesting. And of course, that's not capitalism at all. Uh
So,
that's
so that's
greed.
servitude, right? That's practically
Yeah.
servitude if you would think of it. Like it's not. No civilization is your bonded labor. You're basically treating them as bonded labor. That give them food, give them clothes, and they'll dance for you. That's not a capitalist attitude. Capitalist attitude should be win-win. You win, I win, everyone wins.
Yep.
So
And so,
that's supposed.
mhm. So imagine, let's say, a different scenario in which the British East India Company, it first of all never was a private company; it was a charter, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but let's imagine an alternate British East India Company, which was completely privately funded and was completely private, and just comes in and it just says, "I'm going to trade with you guys," and let's it even becomes a PMC, it becomes a private military company, and it says that I'm also going to offer rights protection services, right?
Ah,
What a
okay.
whole
That's a very nice question. And if I were, that's a very nice train of thought. And
Mhm,
if I were very honest, man, that is exactly what the British East India Company used to look like
mhm,
before the year 1772. And there's a very important reason why I say the year 1772. So that now, as we'll go forward, I'll bring the journey through the Indian lens and how the individual is shaped through the Indian lens. But in the year 1772, something very important happened. And what
mhm,
happened in the year 1772 is Madhavra the First or Madhavra the Elder, the head or the patriarch of the Maratha Confederacy, passed
mhm,
away. And he was only 28 years old. So after the year 1772, what happened was the Maratha Empire started fragmenting.
mhm,
Small states started to emerge, like Gwalior state, the Scindias, the Holkars. These people gained power exponentially. And what this ended up doing was this created these big gaps, big crevices between these supposedly coordinating units. And
mhm,
the British saw that there has been more or less there's something like in Madhavra's time, what happened was post Panipat, the Marathas had considerably weakened for some period of time. When Madhura came in, he set the house in order. I'll tell you what he did. He decreased the debt. His first priority. It's literally written in his will that to pay off the Maratha debt. It's literally codified. And
mhm,
he decreased debt. He made fiscal conservative movements, and most importantly, what he did was he set the house in order. And in the year 1772, out of tuberculosis back then, he died very early, 28. And so these big fragments that had emerged, Gwalior state, Holkar state, the Indore state, the Nagpur state, the Pune state, of course, which is the original Peshwa empire, the southern state, the northern state, the Rajputana, everyone, they started running for power. The
mhm,
British saw what's happening is now there are 1,000 states to deal with. So 1,000 different regulations to deal with, 1,000 different economies to deal with. So the British saw that hey, the anarchy, this is a near anarchy because that's what their thinking was. And anarchy, as in, there's no, I wouldn't call it anarchy in the way you think
chaos,
of it.
chaos,
It's chaos. It's
chaos.
basically chaos. So
Mhm,
these people think, the British think there's no defined set of rules. We don't know
mhm,
what to do. Yes, this day someone's telling me do this. The next day the rules are completely revamping.
mhm,
So I need to gain power. In fact, pre 1772, the British explicitly have the superior saying, "Don't interfere in the local affairs."
Yeah.
So the reason for the British coming is explicitly, and I'll die on this hill, is the Marathas weakening and the lack of leadership at the top.
Hmm. Yep. And
And
see
by
that.
coming, the British coming, I mean, is the British gaining power, is the British Raj coming in place, is this.
Mhm.
Because if you look at it carefully, what was the nature of the British Raj? Were you a citizen if you're born in India and serve the British crown faithfully? You weren't a
Mhm.
British citizen, right? On the other hand, you are a citizen. Like if you're born in Portuguese Goa and you serve the Portuguese crown faithfully, you were full. You had full citizenship rights. So there's a difference between governance between European powers too. And the British always treated this place as a factory ground or a playground or whatever you like to call it. Take resources manufacture. The Portuguese treated this as home, so they went Machiavellian in exerting their ideology,
Mhm.
and the British were like, do what you want to. Be a Hindu, be a Hindu. Be a Muslim, be a Muslim. We don't really care. We want this. That's the British attitude. So
As long
your
as you earn
question
the
that what
water.
if the yeah. that so basically your question, right, or your our train of thought, right, that what if the British had stayed like this. So that question is more like what if Indic rulers had united and not just united, had a a strategy, a common strategy to how to govern faithfully. When
Mhm.
Madhura died, lakhs of millions of people came for his funeral because he was that popular, despite being having reputations of being ultra strict. He used to cane seniors, 60-year-old men, because they used to spend money somewhere, government money somewhere. He was very strict with. I think in my method, he's the closest what comes to a philosopher king.
Mhm.
Anyways, but he was just strict. He used to take care of good governance a lot. So
Mhm.
because of this unified leadership, unified strategy disappearing and fragmenting, the British saw that there's chaos. The only way we can trade is we need to be in power, and that's why
Yeah.
they were literally thrust into power. And one
Mhm.
of my mentors literally showed me data that in the first Anglo-Maratha War, the British East India Company is actually loss making. So
Mhm.
the British superiors are reprimanding them. Are you idiots? What are you doing? You're literally losing you are going against the purpose
Yeah.
you've come for.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
like what are you doing? So that's the point.
Yeah. Because you see, I get two things from this, and I know this has become, we have not even gotten into the main topic yet, but like, let's just,
Exactly.
yeah, let's finish up this, and I'll give my thoughts on this, and you can give a little bit of a retort, and then we'll move on to the main topic, which is
Sure,
the
sure.
broad analysis of Indian history in the, objectivist,
Individual way.
yeah, the pro-individual, the Plato versus Aristotle framework, right? The individual versus the
Yeah, yeah.
collective.
True. True, true.
So, from what I'm getting through this is that what the British were primarily interested in, even though I do not believe they were a properly private company ever, because they were a monopoly within
Chat,
Britain.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
they were
can't
chat.
call them a private company in the modern sense. They're basically an
Yeah,
association with private
yeah,
players.
yes, yes. They were. It was a public-private partnership at best, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
as they call it these days. And so, first of all, there was always already that corruption of statism there. And then when they came in here, uh, you know, like they saw, the Indian states come into, in effect, civil war, right? Not perhaps not even civil war, but there was disorder in the sense that there was no clarity on, there are 500 taxes in the small region, like for every goddamn border
Yeah,
post you're going to.
civil war would be a bit far-fetched
Yeah,
thinking because civil
yeah,
war implies one unified entity, and
yeah,
that's
not
fighting.
civil war.
So
Mhm.
there's a lack of unified entity itself. Like the Surat port is facing different regulations, the Bombay port is facing different regulations, Calcutta is facing different regulations. So the British are like, who are we supposed to deal with?
And
So that's the
also,
issue.
like imagining a world where, let's say, there were no regulations, the problem would have never also arisen, right? So it was.
True. That's a good thinking to have.
Mhm.
That's like at the very least we can definitely say that the lesser the regulation, it's better to deal with,
Yeah.
because otherwise you will have to. And I'll show with ample proof of. I'll
Mhm.
make a statement at the start, and I'll say one thing:
Mhm.
statism as an idea is foreign to India,
Mhm.
and I'll say this thing with complete confidence, and I'll prove it by the end. And I'll
Mhm.
say this concretely, that statism and excessive state control is as an idea is foreign to India,
Mhm.
and the reason why this happened is the
Mhm.
British also were profit maximizers in the end. So
The,
the British
the
also saw.
let me ask you a question. By
Right.
statism, do you mean the modern centralized expansive state, or just like governments in general? So I would say governments have
Modern
existed.
centralized, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Modern,
okay.
I can say one thing, that at the I can say one thing concretely: limited government used to exist, and by
Yeah.
like by any definition, it was limited government. So we'll come to that later.
So
But
in the
regarding your question,
mhm. So in
yeah,
the
continue, please.
traditional, yeah, in the traditional, let's say local government, local
Yeah, yeah.
thing. There,
Hyper decentralized governance.
yes, yes. And so it often used to be like, a couple of families together, they might be owning a bunch of stuff.
Exactly.
Like it
Exactly.
was
Exactly.
approximating private property in many ways. Though
Yeah, yeah.
there were issues there. We know, right? Like the India has,
Yeah, social hierarchies,
yeah.
hierarchical nature, those things.
Mhm.
But even then, like, see, Indian it's a system. So any system is bound to have some pros and some cons.
Mhm.
But why do you have to go beyond the system? You have to have your common axioms. It shouldn't violate individual right. And
Yes.
what's the most important individual right is, according to me too, it's property. So
Mhm.
property should not be violated. And the minute
Yeah.
property starts violating, you get things, you get
Yeah.
totalitarian nightmares. So we will see that. But
Yeah.
you pinpointed a thing very correctly, that
Mhm.
yes, the British were more or less trying to be, uh, trying to maximize profit, and
Mhm.
they saw that either to trade or maximize profit, I will have to take power.
Yes.
And that's what they saw, that they've
Mhm.
shifted many kings on their pensions. They
Mhm.
kept the rule and everything as is,
Mhm.
and they're just like, let pass these permits for me, let me trade freely, you do what you have to do, I don't care,
Yeah.
just let me trade. So
Yeah.
they basically, if I were very correctly put, the British were what we would call crony capitalists. They
Mhm.
wanted state support for their
Mhm.
for their enterprises. And
Yeah.
post 1858, that cronism died, and the British
And
actually came to power, and
yeah,
then it started in the full swing.
I agree. I agree. The pre, the pre, what was it called? The last Mughal Emperor's rebellion. What was it called?
Yeah, Great War of Independence.
Yeah, yeah. The pre-Great War of Independence thing. Like the British were far more laxer in their rule. Was all it was still crony capitalists, right? They were like, yeah, you worry
Okay.
about whatever the hell you want to do. Just come to work on time and get me my goods, right? And you
Yeah,
know, after that rebellion, that failed rebellion, what happened was that the British Crown took over, and that's when the
yeah.
centralized proto-communism of the British Raj came in.
True,
Would I
true,
be
true.
correct?
And pre 1857, actually, lots of people were on the side of the British. Like, the rulers had become so lax and so
Yeah.
exploitative that everyone started shifting to the British side.
Mhm. And it made sense to me, right? It's like I get to keep all my titles, I get to make money,
Yeah, I
and
just have
these
to
people
pay.
do all the work.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, because there's a limited in this sense that I have to pay, I have to slash 1% of my income, I have to shove it on your face, and everything else I can do what I have to. So
Yeah,
why
I
not? Rather than
I'm still called the king, but you do all
king,
the
the
rule.
emperor, these big
Yeah,
names.
exactly. Yeah. So let's get
That's
into
the
it.
thinking.
Mhm. Let's get into it. So
Great.
I'll give the floor to you. Give your presentation. I might ask questions where appropriate, but
Yeah, I want you to. I want you to. I can go into tangents, random tangents. So I want
mhm,
you to, whenever I go, either poke me back or ask good questions. So
mhm,
we can get something out of. I don't want it to be my presentation. It should be a back and forth. But yeah,
yeah.
I would like to lead the flow. I have no problems in doing that.
Mhm, mhm. Go ahead. So.
So yeah, I'll start now.
Mhm,
And I'll start by saying one particular thing. And there's a Sanskrit mantra that comes to my brain. So I'll start by saying that the Sanskrit mantra goes by Namaste Sharate Devi Saraswati Mati Prade Vasatvam Mama Jivagrahe Sarva Vidya Pradabha. Now, there's a reason why I said this particular mantra. Now, if you speak some Hindi or Sanskrit,
I
any
do.
audience would know.
Mhm,
I'm basically talking about Saraswati. So Saraswati means the goddess of wisdom in the Indic canon, and
mhm,
I am invoking her, and I'm saying, give me knowledge. So I am, as you know, I am not a very big believer in God, but I can say one thing, that this is an occasion to particularly say this, because we are on the day of Vasant Panchami. Now, Vasant Panchami is a very big festival if you were to understand it carefully. Now, Vasant Panchami is the day when officially spring begins.
Yeah.
So, according to the lunar calendar, this is the
Mhm.
day spring begins. And
Yeah.
on this day, you are supposed to pray for good harvest. You are supposed to thank farmers, and you are supposed to invoke. You're supposed to literally invoke or do the puja of the goddess of wisdom.
Yeah.
So, tell me that doesn't sound like Thanksgiving. This
Yeah.
is the, according to me, this is the Indian version of Thanksgiving. And the
Mhm.
reason I say this is Vasant Panchami was also co-opted by a lot of Sufi saints. I have actually made a video on that, and it was co-opted by Sufi saints, and that's a personal reason. That's a big story there. But this is one thing, that this is a unifying thread in roughly all of South Asia. That on this day we mark the start of spring, and you are supposed to wear yellow. So I'm wearing yellow because of it.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, you
why I
should have
say this?
told me that. I would have pulled out my yellow sweater.
No, no worries, no worries, man, no worries. Anyways, one person's enough, right? That being said, why I said this is, Ayn Rand says in Thanksgiving you're supposed to thank the individuals who work, who empower, who give the nation or the society, like virtue, knowledge, and all these abstract things.
Mhm.
So I'll start by saying why either of Vasant Panchami or Thanksgiving or these festivals, every more or less every, you'll see every civilization that respects humanity is bound to have some sort of these festivals that actually thank the hard workers. Now I'll say what are these hard workers or what exactly is the individual.
Mhm.
So the individual is, in according to Ayn Rand, or and in my personal thinking too, it's the smallest minority. It's the absolute minority. Now what this means is a minority has to have two things. A minority has to have a brain and
Mhm.
or a defined set of ideas. And secondly, it has to be a sovereign on its own or fully functional on its own. So
Mhm.
that's what Ayn Rand does. Ayn Rand codifies it, saying the smallest minority and the smallest entity, that is A, has a brain and thinking capacity on ideas or reasoning faculty, whatever. And
Mhm.
two, it is completely independent on its own to survive and flourish. These
Mhm.
two things, according to me, make what we'll call the individual. Now there will be people who will jump on me saying, hey, man is a social animal, man is a primitive animal, blah 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 blah. But the reason is, see, the definition of flourishing can vary across the spectrum. Why? Because you have to look at the individual on two sides. The individual has A, the rational side, B, the emotional side. I wouldn't call emotions completely as irrational too, but
Yeah.
emotions are certainly not perfectly rational. So emotions are a bit more like what you would call stochastic numbers. They are indicators of rationality, by the way. How
Mhm.
they are indicators at best.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
I'd
you'd like to say
comment on
something?
that a little bit. So, I've read a bunch of Brandon and Jean Maroney. Jean Maroney is like the leading objectivist psychologist right now. So, and she has a great theory of emotions. So, it's on her website, The Thinking Lab. It's paid, so you could go and pay for that if you want to listen to it. But it's worth it, I would say. Uh,
Okay.
so the theory is that what emotion, and you almost got it right in the sense that what emotions are, they are automatic, like they're time savers, right? So uh,
Hmm.
l-
Correct.
take this example. When I see a symbol of wealth, right? uh, I feel proud, right? I feel that, God damn it, that man did some work. My country is the kind of country in which a man is able to work hard and get a goddamn Porsche, right? And assuming
True.
that person worked hard, right? There are other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
True.
but
True. True.
even if he got it through unfair means, someone is working hard so that he could steal from them. So the
Exactly.
point
Exactly.
still
True.
stands. And so like I live in a world in which human flourishing is possible. That's what I feel when I see, let's say, a Porsche drive down the road, versus what would someone from a socialist mindset see. They would see, the embodiment of evil in a car, right? And they're going to be probably
Yeah.
angry and upset.
Oh, exploitative bourgeois man, something like that.
Exactly, right? And so what emotions are, they are responses to your deeply held beliefs and your deeply held convictions, right? And
True.
so,
And also, and I'd like to say that one thing, that I also come from the school that believe that some emotions are completely random,
mhm,
and that's how. By what I mean by that is, any, for example, a belief. Let's come at, yeah. You are right in saying that emotions are responsible for all. are basically indicators of a belief,
They're
right?
responses, right? Like,
Their responses indicators of a belief, and they are responses according to your belief to something
mhm,
else. The
yeah,
reason I say some emotions are random too is because
mhm,
if a belief has come into your brain unchecked,
yeah.
if you've been if some person is
It
not a
will
rational,
appear random. Yeah.
yeah,
And the
and
person
it
has
got
to
set.
then, yeah, you have to do the work. You have to do the work of figuring out where it's coming from. Like, uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's why they say, right, meditation, journaling, regardless of you believe in yoga or not, should be done, because you never know what belief, what prejudice is in your brain. So you have to. It's not. It
yeah,
doesn't mean you have to be paranoid and keep checking, but you
yeah,
have to just observe what's
yeah.
happening.
It's like, if something weird happens to you, like, if let's say you see something and you find yourself, unreasonably overjoyed or unreasonably angry, right? And you see, well,
Without being able to identify where it's coming from.
yeah, and you,
That's
yeah,
completely random.
that's when you go to the, you go to either a psychologist, or you do some, deep self introspection. You write down in your journals and you figure
True.
out where the
True.
hell it's
True.
coming from, right? It's like, uh,
Yep.
and you don't need to do it for everything, but like do it for the major things, right? Like, I wouldn't say, like, devote your life to becoming the perfect person, because then with all that perfection, what did you do? You just sat around doing nothing, right?
Yeah, and it's also that perfection is not really. You see, humans are dynamic entities, and that's why I say again we come back to the individual is a sovereign entity, and
Mhm,
sovereign may have good values, bad values, really good values, really bad values. So it's a huge spectrum of
mhm,
possibilities. So once you realize that, uh, because value knowledge is not static, knowledge is dynamic. Experience is not static, experience is dynamic. So emotion is not also not static, and emotion is
yeah.
also not dynamic. Something if I like if I I still remember the first Twitter space that we did. I thought Man was this smug guy who doesn't know what he's talking about, who's just quoting Rothbard and Hop, and he's not connecting things because like I had internet issues, so I
Mhm,
conversation used to shift very randomly. But now I'm
mhm,
doing long ass podcast with him. He's coming to meet me and random stuff that's
right.
happening. So
Mhm,
it also depends on that's why there's a very nice story that Don Watkins talks about, and he
mhm,
says that hey, Nathaniel Brandon and Rand are, they had a very long courtship. So
yeah.
Rand is confused about what to do. Rand is thinking, these actions are hurting me, but I'm not able to put a pin on why they are hurting me. So you never know. It might be that because I may have a health ailment, and that's why my mood is off. That's why even a normal action of Nathaniel Brandon may hurt me more than it's supposed to. So unless and until I concretely figure out what's hurting me, what
Mhm,
exactly is happening, what belief of mine is being challenged, on what rational level am I thinking,
mhm,
I shouldn't talk to him, or I shouldn't break up with him or something like that. So that being said, now that we have concretely identified, there's one rational side to the individual and one emotional side to the individual.
mhm,
When man at its rational side, you get random thinkings that as we go forward, I'll describe. James Burnham in his book, I've recommended it to you, and I recommend to your readers as well. It's a book called The Machiavellians by James Burnham. In it, he describes Dante, he describes Machiavelli, he describes these great thinkers of. He describes Pareto. Pareto is one of my favorite thinkers. So he
mhm,
describes all these great thinkers, and he goes on how politics works like. So he coins a term at the start, saying something called the political man. Now, what he means by this is he doesn't mean the men who participate in politics. What he means by that is when man, the entity, makes decisions in politics. So it's either the voter or the politician or anyone who's there.
mhm,
He is an irrational animal. Now, for me, someone who's read a big all this data on Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead and huge capitalist sections, I saw, okay, how can a man be irrational and how can these things be there? But when
mhm,
he proved using thought experiments and you proved using actual psychological and philosophical data, have you ever seen how people vote? How have you ever seen on how people exercise the right to
mhm,
democracy, how the right to republic, and how big of privileges they have, and how they treat it like trash that they live in a republic. Living in a republic is the greatest privilege you can have in the modern day society. Like I know you will disagree, but
eh,
compared to history, and I'll
yeah.
walk you through. Compared to the kind of chaos, compared to the
Yeah.
kind of violent exertion that compared to the kind of things you're subject to based on someone's whim.
Mhm.
So compared to you have
See,
someone
I
acknowledges your rights.
yeah. I would counter with this. All else being equal, right? Like I would say the reason, uh, look at it this way. So the prevalent liberalism, and I use the word in the English sense and not the, European Spanish
Modern
sense,
sense.
right? Like
Mhm.
in Argentina, liberalism is our people. So like I'm not using
Yeah.
those, right? So I'm saying the
Like
way
you're
it
saying
might be.
modern liberalism, right? Like the left modern
Yeah,
liberalism.
yeah, the left like, and also where it's coming from. Like in India, left liberalism is what we have when it comes to, you know, the foreign element in our country.
True.
There's the Hindu right, there's the left liberals, and everybody must decide among them, in effect.
Yeah, and both of them. The Hindu right's not really Hindu and neither right, and the left liberal is neither left nor liberal. So we don't even know what to decide.
Yeah, and so what's coming, like the modern state, the modern left liberal state, let's say. On, and by
Hmm.
this, I mean, let's say the current US government, the current EU infrastructure, the current Indian government as well, because that's just, a copy paste of the British government. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I think the right word to describe is the Fabian socialist because
yeah,
they aren't really socialist, but they are. That's
yeah,
the right word.
yes, yes. And so there is a mixture there. It's not truly leftist, because truly leftism, you get Soviet Union, or even worse. And it's not liberal, but it has elements of it. Like it has holdovers of liberalism. It has a little bit of lock in it. It has sometimes the words rights in it. It has sometimes, some. It is trying to preserve some good of the past as well. And so what you get is a mixture. And I think everything good that exists in this infrastructure, all the wealth that is being created, is literally just that holdover of liberalism. And
Yeah,
I,
true. That residue, honestly, that residue. It's not even
yeah,
holdover, just residue that at the bottom
yeah,
of
yeah.
the barrel. True.
Exactly. But I would say, and this is Hopper's point, right? That uh, people are misclassing one element of this whole package. Like you're an objectivist, package deals, right? So
True. True.
they're misclassing the democracy part as part of liberalism, whereas no, it should be the part of the socialism, right? Like
True.
in the sense that all else being equal, and of course, all else is not equal. A democracy is less preferable to, let's say, even a monarchy. What do I mean by that? I
And
mean,
we'll come to that. We'll come to that. The
yeah,
problem
yeah.
with the monarchy in the end, based on history,
Mhm.
is that it is much more whimsical. And see, I
Possibly,
can say one thing.
and by the way,
Monarchy, in
mhm,
monarchy, the counterpart maybe in monarchy you have to deal with whims of only one person or a small group of person,
it's
whereas in
far easier.
democracy you have to deal with whims of.
It's far easier to remove one. You know.
True, true, true. As history, and that's the problem, right?
See
Again,
that's the
chaos.
limiting principle, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, and again, that's the problem. If it's easier to remove one for you, it's even easier to remove one for a big, stronger foreign power who has
mhm,
exploitative aims. So you have
yeah,
to think about it.
that's why I'm saying all else being equal, right?
That's why
Oftentimes,
all else
all
is
else is not equal, right? So
true,
you can.
true.
So it's much more
That's
of
why
a concept.
Nassim Taleb has a very nice argument for it. He says that at the friends and family level, I am a socialist. At the district level, I am a
Uh,
Democrat. Yeah. Listen to
yeah.
why he gives a justification. At the
Mhm.
district level, I am a Democrat. At the state level, I'm a Republican, and at the federal level, I'm a Libertarian. The reason he says that is you're adding everyone's irrationality. It's far easier for me to deal with the irrationality of a small group of people than it is to deal with the irrationality to
Oh yeah,
control,
yeah,
to calculate, to
yeah.
maneuver
I get
everyone's.
that. I get that one. Though I would not agree with that formulation. I don't think you would
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
I no, no. I too
Yeah,
am
yeah.
a libertarian throughout, and this
Yeah.
doesn't mean like if man's bleeding out, I will let him bleed. This just means that I just value property everywhere, and
Exactly. Yeah.
that's it.
Mhm.
And
And
this also doesn't mean, by the way, by property also I mean like consent. This also doesn't mean we won't share food with each
yeah,
other. These are actual criticisms I've
he's
heard of
right.
liberalism.
Yeah. Yeah, those people are either stupid or misleading.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
had years of arguments behind me, and I don't care about those people anymore. If
True,
you
true.
if you believe that, keep believing that.
Yeah,
Keep.
exactly. The core is consent. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, so this is what we mean by individual. Now I'll
The,
move to
let
continue.
me, uh, for example, just to end on the Hoppian point, I'm so sorry. I had a train of thought going. It's
True.
not stopping.
Ah,
So,
continue, continue.
uh, you know, like take the example of, let's say, you know, uh, North Korea, which is in effect a monarchy, right? Uh, Now, Hopper is not saying North Korea is preferable to the United States. He's saying, let's imagine two countries, everything is equal, and like they have roughly the same kind of population, roughly the same kind of ideas among the people, roughly the same kind of everything, and one has a monarchy and one has a democracy. We would see that the monarchy country will grow to be more richer than the democracy country, because in democracy there is the incentive of,
It's,
let's say,
it's it's unified, it's homogeneous, everyone's working together, everyone has common aims. So yeah,
yeah,
that I realize. But
yeah,
this thought experiment is not, again, this he realizes, this again falls for. That's why I like this argument when I throw this in libertarian spaces, because
yeah.
libertarians are big fans of Kant and Hayek and this
Not all,
gang. They
not
just,
all, not all.
of course not all, but most of them I've encountered, and
Mhm.
they give the justification of capitalism, saying that we aren't irrational actors, and we aren't, sorry, we aren't rational actors, and that's why, by we they mean majority of the population isn't a rational actor, and that's why you bring in this, what shall we say, fail check, safe check, to
Yeah,
yeah,
safeguard.
yeah, safeguard, which is a republic, so that you can control the will of the majority, control as in keep it in check. You can safeguard the rights of the minorities, and you can also interchange that the minority doesn't, become this elitist concoction that controls this majority,
Mhm.
which is really in practice, unfortunately,
You're not gonna do that.
this hasn't
Like,
last. This
never gonna happen. It's like, okay,
No,
we
no,
are
but
going to give.
I wouldn't say it never did happen. I agree with Rand that post 1880, post 1865 US does seem to be pretty stable in
But
this regard.
look at it. Like the US, for example, in the beginning had a much more limited democracy. Like who was allowed to vote? Men above a certain age who owned property. Now, of course, I
True,
would
true,
say,
but that ended up, Adam Smith demonstrated it, and Tocqueville also demonstrated it, that that's actually hindering your progress. That's hindering material progress, and
Mhm.
it's also, of course, let's not even get into the morality of that.
No,
But
no, I would say, of course, the only thing wrong with that is the men part. I would say women who own property should also be allowed to vote. And like,
men,
there can
and
be.
also no, it's also
Mhm.
like skin people of color. Then it's
Yeah, of
also
course, of course. Yeah. All included. But the
yeah.
idea was to limit democracy, right? Like, and by
The
the way,
idea was to
everyone.
limit will of the majority,
Yes,
and
yes.
there's a nice argument nowadays that's coming that rather than it's basically a derivative, a fraud derivative of that, but it's a taxpayers argument, like let the taxpayers only vote. So it's
Yeah. Basically the
uh,
same thing, right?
basically the
And
same thing.
the
So
net taxpayers vote
of course
proportional
there's
to how they pay.
of course there's merit in that,
Mhm.
and the taxpayer argument actually has greater merit according to me,
I
because
agree. I agree.
in
Mhm.
so in the age of where you are working, I agree that Rishi, if you know Rishi from Twitter,
Yeah.
he makes this argument that, see, the elites, you need to trust the elites a bit more, just a bit more, and
The common
the
man like
majority
you.
just a bit less, so that both these powers themselves also. And James Bonham actually makes the same argument. James Bonham's hero of the American conservatives, by the way, but I mean, you know how much his ideas are followed. But James Bonham actually, but still, I still have hopes from the American conservative movement and America in general.
No,
I have
no.
hopes.
America, yes, not the conservatives. Like they're gonna have to crash and burn for anything good to happen in that country. But I believe this.
Let's see what happens. But I also have hopes from India in
I do.
general. Both these systems I have. But one thing I like to, James Bonham makes this exact argument that the only way you could keep the elites in check is to have more elites, and which
Yeah.
are fighting with each other. So that's why he brings the Darwinian equivalent of elites
Yeah.
versus the majority,
See.
and he's right, really. So you need to have these parallel systems that actually they don't unify. So otherwise it's basically elites versus this very gullible, irrational kind of majority that can be wiped off like this. So I agree with this point that it's far easier for an external threat to act over a republic than it is to act over a well constructed, well defined, and well organized monarchy. This point I have, and this point history is in my favor. But the problem is these three variables that I put. well constructed. Roughly half of the monarchies fail here because half of the monarchies are only
Still
interested
state.
in they're
They're
expansive
still
powers.
state. They're still bad, right? Like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, no,
that's
no.
the
And
broader point.
even most of them are exploitative states. They
Mm-hmm.
aren't these like according to exploitative state would be a double definition or a,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
unnecessary adjective. But
Yeah.
I'll say that it's still it's
The
exploitative.
coffee tasting coffee.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's I don't agree. I still believe in a limited government. I'm a proper
I get you.
objectivist in that sense.
Yeah,
But
I get you.
but after that, you see the second variable, well
Mhm.
organized, and another
Yeah,
30% fall off there. So roughly eighty
I get
percent
it.
go up.
Mhm.
So and remaining 10. So
Yeah.
a constitutional republic, given out of the given choices, it's still the greatest. I would say the greatest, the best, the least worst in your definition. The
Mhm.
outcome out there. But the problem is there's not many constitutional
Of what
republics
has
today.
existed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
of what has existed, right? Because uh,
And see, even
mhm.
objectivists, like objectivists, think of a state or define a state in a sense that you won't call it a state.
Yeah.
The objectivist definition of a state is voluntary
Mhm.
money,
Uh,
voluntary collection of the funds
yeah,
and
yeah.
all.
Like I have a really good, like there's this argument that I keep in my back pocket whenever I encounter an objectivist, and I pull it out and like, okay, will you do this, this, and this? Then your government is not a state. Like depending upon if they say yes or no,
Exactly.
you know.
Your arguments against taxation, right?
Mhm.
And
Not even
at the very
taxation,
least,
right? Let me give you that argument. Let's see if I can convert you on live TV. Okay. So suppose we have achieved objectivistan. We have achieved the perfect objectivist government,
yeah,
right?
yeah. True.
And suppose now I'm a great entrepreneur and I start a company and I agree on the point of individual rights, and all I want to do is provide policing and court services, right? There is no disagreement upon the point of rights. All I want to do is compete with, let's say, whatever the current government is offering on the point of cost. Let's say they're doing it for 1,000 rupees. I'm going to do it for 800, right? Uh, would the objectivist government stop me from doing so?
Would you sign a certificate of allegiance to the objectives government? That's the question. Then you are basically offshoring.
I would
You're a contractor then.
no. I would sign a certificate saying that I will respect individual rights. I will not sign an allegiance.
All that is good, but see, because it being an abstract definition, it has
Mhm.
to be enforced by the courts itself, and courts
Yeah.
don't believe in like legality doesn't believe in abstract definitions.
No, but
So if you sign,
we're talking about it has been achieved. We're
no,
talking about
even
this is the perfect outcome.
according to me, even for an objectivist law system, you can't actually be an abstract. You can't see. You have to align it, and that's why to say I want a system that respects individual rights, new rights have to be created in the legal sphere. By what I mean by that is
Yeah.
someone stealing your video game footage, for example, or a video game disc. That is actual. Mises
Yeah.
defines it properly that you're stealing property, you're violating property rights. But
Mhm.
in an era of someone stealing video game royalties, video game royalties are treated differently than video music royalties. They
No,
have
no,
a difference.
that's why I am here, like of course the conversation in real life is much more complex, and I get that,
Yeah,
but right now I'm just saying in principle, right? Let's say there is no disagreement upon the rules, and there is only a disagreement upon, hey, I'm just going to enforce the exact same rules for a half price. Will the objectivist government come and shut me down, or will they not? Like I'm violating no rights. I'm violating nobody's
see,
rights.
in my thinking, and I think Rand has defined it in the same manner. A government is something that has the sole monopoly on violence, and
No,
it
no,
doesn't mean you
that's what I'm
can't.
trying to challenge you. Like I'm
There,
trying,
no,
yeah.
I'd still say the government will stop you, unfortunately,
But
in
but
the
but
objective
see,
one.
if you're saying unfortunately, then you're saying they shouldn't. That it's bad that they stop me, right?
Yeah, because to preserve the social fabric, it has to bite a bitter bullet,
No,
and
but then
that's the thing that's
that's not.
doing.
See. Then that becomes the argument that if it stops me, then it is a government. True, it still has a monopoly, but it has initiated force, and it has violated the objectivist principle of non-initiation of force, and so it is no longer.
State is not an
But
individual entity, right? An
no, no,
individual entity by
it's made
itself
up
is a
of.
def- Mm.
It's made up of them. Like it's not a abstraction in the air. It's still made up of people, right? Someone will come to my house to stop me, right? Someone will violate the non-aggression principle, right? So uh,
Yeah, and that's literally that's why
and
Rand
that's
states it
bad,
differently.
right?
Of
And
course,
that's bad.
it's bad given that non-aggression is bad. Given that's why Rand says it right. Non-aggression is bad by individual actors. I'm saying objective theory.
How is this?
What are my personal opinions on this? We can
No, no,
debate
no.
it in a separate call.
I'm asking you as a like assuming you agree with the objectivist. Like, would it be wrong for them to stop me on this?
By policing again, policing is a big question.
Hmm?
See, man, I'll tell you one thing honestly. We are discussing concretes in an abstract manner, which doesn't
Yeah.
make sense because
No, no.
policing, the word policing is itself
But
invokes violence. Police
that's
literally means violence.
no, no, not necessarily. It's, let's say, only defensive violence, right? The problem is initiatory violence.
So you'll basically be a security guard then,
Yeah.
and that will be, of course, be allowed.
No, no,
What's the
but
issue in that?
that's the issue, right? You scale up a security guard enough, it starts looking like a state, like rather a private military corporation,
True,
right? And
true, and
so
that's why you need safeguards, right? Again,
mhm, that, that
we
this is where I catch them. This is where I be like, aha, we are caught. In which, you
yeah.
know,
See, again, I don't
and
get
this is
into these conversations. That's the problem, right? Because this is a very smart way of catching a political opponent. Because what you're doing is you're discussing politics in a very
mhm.
abstract sense that doesn't correlate with questions on ground. Because
No, but
even legal systems have to take
see,
irrational elements into account.
no, no, no.
The amount of
But
nonsensical laws that are
I'm
like
making a
don't motorboard.
I agree. I agree. I'm just making the broader point that, of course, like, most people who have been in contact with, people like you and me, been in contact with both objectivist and ANCAP literature, like on 5,000 out of like 4,999 out of 5,000
They
questions that
agree.
face us,
They agree
we
only.
agree. Like we're practically the same boat.
And by the way, it's not just 499. It's literally from ANCAP to classical liberals to
Mhm.
objectivists. Everyone agrees on the basic
Most
question is don't move your foot out of my neck. And that's the
Mhm.
basic question everyone has to talk
Mhm.
about. Now the
But
extent which you want, some people say the foot shouldn't exist, some people say it should exist only for roads, some people say it
Mhm.
should only exist for this security purposes. So you
Mhm.
don't have to you can keep thinking about what even Rand says if it exists only for security, it's not exactly a foot, it's your arm only. So
Yeah,
you have to think about what exactly is
yeah.
going on.
But
And
see,
this is a
uh,
non-conversation at this point in
no,
time.
no, no. It's important. So what? The reason it's important is, and this is what I try to put forward to most objectivists, is that either what you're talking about is not really a government, and in which case you are an ANCAP, you just don't know about it, or you have to bite the bullet and say that, okay, the government is allowed to, aggress, but we are not allowed to. Then you have to prove that. But we don't need to get into that now. But like you can see why this argument is powerful, right? Like this is the
True,
Eroy
true.
child. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a very nice
yeah.
argument. That's a very
Yeah.
nice method to put at it.
Mhm.
I kind of didn't even participate in the conversation. The reason for that is unless I have the particulars, I can't give it. In an
Mhm.
abstraction, I just can't answer it.
It's just abstract, right? The reason
Yeah.
is like the question that's being asked is, like, will you, like, why? Basically, the question is why the monopoly? And let's say if you have to, violate your own principles to maintain the monopoly, is that worth it? Is that correct? So, like,
That's a
that's the point.
very nice thing to ponder over, and that's a at the very least it gets someone really understand.
Mhm.
It gets someone to really understand what a state, what
Yes, yes, yes.
violence, all those
Yeah.
things are. That's a very
Mhm.
nice question. Anyways,
Yeah.
we move to a big tangent,
Yeah.
I suppose. We
Yes,
should
yes,
come
yes.
back to. So
Okay.
now let's go on to now
Mhm.
that we define individual, what exactly an individual means.
Mhm.
I'll just repeat it for the sake of brevity. First one, brain, ability to function, faculty of reason. Second, independence. And by independence, it doesn't mean you should grow your food by itself. You should, live like a hermit. It doesn't mean that. By mutual consent, you should be able to live, trade property for property, value for value, and able to survive and, in case, flourish. So again, people won't believe this, but even a relationship is a sign of independence, a good relationship, because you are exchanging value, you're exchanging commitment, you're exchanging these things, you're
Yes.
trading off things that you don't like, both parties don't like. So that's the sign of a healthy, good, and actual individual.
Yes.
Now we should go on to the attitude. So the first great references and the most popular references we find about the individual have been excellently talked about in the book The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant. And Will Durant actually talks about who started the thinking about individual, and Rand agrees with him. And it's a mainstream common discourse that the Greeks actually thought about the individual a lot, and
Mhm.
for them man was truly a heroic being.
Yeah.
And that's a very nice method to understand it.
Hmm.
Because Plato, despite being the creator of statism as we know it today, was actually thought of man in a very high sense. He held man in a very high regard. And Aristotle, we know, for him man was the epitome of all beings.
Hmm.
And it's basically Aristotle describes man in such a beautiful manner, and
We're
he
gonna do.
describes him,
Mhm.
right?
If you are willing, let's figure out another time and do like a reading of Aristotle's
Yeah, yeah.
magnanimous man. Like I
True,
want
true.
to.
We can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be really great. But
Yeah.
I still,
Mhm.
another reason why I'm wearing yellow today is because actually Sufi saints use Aristotle in describing what man is, because they describe,
More about
yeah, yeah, because
that.
man is described as, yeah.
Just a question. So there's something I've wondered in the sense that the Muslims were the rediscoverers of Aristotle, right? And
Averroes in particular was the rediscoverer of Aristotle, and I'll say one thing that
no, it
like,
was the Caliphate's invasion into Syria and discovery of the
yeah,
script.
yeah, all those things. And Averroes particularly discovered what Aristotle is, and he brought Aristotle into the mainstream in Muslim society. And
Yeah.
Averroes is my favorite Muslim, and perhaps one of my favorite people of all time, because Averroes is literally telling the Islamic clergy to rein in, to let people live, and to let a scientific rational value. And unfortunately, the clergy won.
Only they listened.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the clergy won, but Averroes is a great human being.
And
That being said,
and I wanted to ask, like, you are far more knowledgeable in Indian history than I am.
yeah,
Though I want to close that gap eventually. I want to read more about it. I'm going to ask you
yeah,
for recommendations. So,
yeah.
uh, you know, like, I'm pretty sure, like, India was, at least to its credit, a very philosophical society always. It was
Oh,
very,
far more.
right?
According to me, it only the Greeks come close to being how philosophical. I'll just tell you a small example. I was just
Mhm.
discussing Rig Veda with a senior a couple of days back, and he starts by saying Indians are stupid, and I'm like, why? Out of nowhere, you're saying this, and he
Yeah,
said, look at what the Indians are discussing, the Hindus, and he's also Hindu. So look at what the Hindus are discussing. They start the Rig Veda by discussing the nature of the universe, how it was created, how. So they are
it's,
pondering these deep questions.
metaphysical, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they decide, they're talking about big questions. They're talking about different things. It's still primitive, unfortunately. They make this two. It's very Platonist also. They make two world distinctions, and then
That's the
this is,
problem.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
problem.
and
That's where
and
India went wrong. We never
yeah,
had an
exactly.
Aristotle.
And this is
We
this is the
never,
exact thing
we
I
have
keep
had,
discussing.
500 Platos and no Aristotles. That's
we
where
we
our
had
country
we had Aristotle close by. We had people
close.
going
Yeah.
near Aristotle,
No.
but then again
Yeah.
withdrawing.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we have one guy who almost was Aristotle, but not really, right? And then we have
Epicurus
500
comes
Platos.
close. But I'll tell you,
Yeah.
in political sense, we have people far better than Aristotle. We have
Mhm.
people far, we have great, like we have these thinkers who have,
Mhm.
created this path. But anyways, I was talking about Sufi saints, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reason why I'm
Yeah.
wearing yellow is
Yeah. But
Aristotle describes, I'll just complete this one sentence.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
Aristotle describes man in such a great manner, and the Bible describes man in such a great manner. The Quran. So what literally the Sufi saints are singing is David, when David's in, there's actually, it's in Persian, I'm translating it to English. So when angels sang in the voice of David, like sang in the sweet melodious voice of David the saint and David the king.
Mhm.
So when angels sang in the sweet melodious voice of David, under God's command, the soul enters the human body. So they have given man a divine place. They have literally given man a divine place.
Yeah.
Even the Muslims have given. and Christians have of course given, but Aristotle has like they're tracing every this is being traced back to Aristotle.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying the Quran is traced back to Aristotle, but you
Yeah.
see like in Muslim you have Muslim you see a strong effect of Aristotle even on Muslim thinkers. I'll make this distinction at the start only.
Hmm.
There's a difference between Islam and Muslims in general.
Yeah.
So Muslims are of course Muslims are very sticky with respect to Islam, and to
Mhm.
the ordinary Muslim, anything that goes against Islam will be not acceptable. But
Depends
still,
on the
there
country as
is
well. Like it's like,
yeah, of course. But no, but as a rule of thumb, you can say it very clearly that if a
yeah.
Muslim is doing something either good or bad, he's trying to justify it in the name of Islam.
Yeah.
So that's a good rule of thumb to understand.
Mhm.
So, but still, I will make this distinction here. You don't need to make that between Hindus because Hindus are kind of one body and a
Yeah.
thousand bodies. Same for
Yeah.
Christians. You can see
Hin-
many atheist Christians.
Hmm? Hinduism just means broadly a philosophy which was around, which originated in the Indian subcontinent. So like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not really a
It's
religion. It has a lot of religions in it, and it has
And no, no,
atheistic
I also
philosophy.
say it's a collection. It's a collection of competing philosophies. It's not even
Yes,
one philosophy. It's a collection of competing
there are
philosophies.
atheistic Hindus. So like
Yeah, yeah,
not,
oh, strongly.
yeah,
I'm one of them.
yeah,
I'll say rather I'm a capital H atheist Hindu,
yeah. Okay.
and proudly.
Mhm. And so yeah, so there are like schools of thought in Hinduism which are atheistic in nature. So
True,
they don't believe in God at all. And so it's Hinduism is no religion at all. It's a collection of philosophies which are mostly religious but not necessarily religious. Would I be correct in
true.
that?
True, true, true. And see, again, we can again define what religion is because religion, according to me, if I were to give it the benefit of doubt, at the
Mhm.
best, religion is a primitive philosophy,
Yes.
and at its worst, it is a tool for control. So it's there's a big spectrum there.
Mhm.
So that's why the best definition, according to me, would be there is no such thing as a Hindu religion itself. It's a
Yeah.
Hindu
No
civilization
such thing. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is parallelly competing, and Hindu civilization must be preserved. Period.
Mhm.
So preserve, flourished, and further on. But what I meant to say is these Greek thinkers have given man a very important place. So that's why they start talking about individual. Then they start talking about how individual flourishing is. But
Mhm.
there is an unlikely place, and why I keep saying this Hindu civilization, there is an unlikely place south of Greece, southeast of Greece, that thinks about the individual, these deep questions, these deep metaphysical questions, so much so that it does decide what to do and what not to do about individual. And I think it is my thesis and my kind of my life statement to integrate Hinduism, or I wouldn't say Hinduism. Some people will say Hindutva because Hindutva is atheistic. So Hindutva is a political movement and it is an atheistic. I wouldn't say even atheistic. It is a non-denominational, non-religious, or a religion independent. It doesn't care if you are religious, if you care about God,
I got your point.
if you don't care about God.
Yeah.
Savarkar literally defines Hindu as someone who's born in India and who believes in ideas that originated out of India. So that means it includes Hindus, it includes Buddhists, it includes Jains,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That,
it includes atheists also because atheism is a standard idea here. So it includes every people like every
though,
person like that.
how would you then justify, let's say, holding to objectivism? Because that didn't come out of India.
I'll say one thing that objectivism, the framing of objectivism came from
Mhm.
the West.
Mhm.
And what is objectivism? Objectivism is an acknowledgement of rights that we have.
No,
Simply
no,
put,
that's just the politics, right? What about the metaphysics, epistemology, ethics? What do you think about that?
again, it's Savarkar's definition. I don't agree with it.
No, no,
So
but
I don't agree with it fully.
yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is, like the way I look at things is that, it's like imagine if there was a bus coming at me right there. Like I'm on the road and there's a bus coming at me, and a person standing to my west says, "Hey, there's a bus coming at me," right? I'm not going to say you're from the west and therefore I will not listen to you. If he's saying the truth, he's saying the truth. If he's lying, he's lying,
Exactly.
right?
And like
And
this
so,
was the Hindu attitude, by the way. So the Greeks taught us many things, we taught the Greeks many things, and this
yeah,
doesn't mean don't exchange things. He's just defining one particular sect of people.
yeah,
Like, for example, if I were to define Gujaratis, right? People born in Gujarat are speaking Gujarati.
yeah,
This
but
doesn't mean Gujaratis hate everyone else.
yeah, yeah. But I would then no, like, see, I wouldn't call myself a Hindu because technically due to that, I agree with that definition. By the way, it's a good definition. But I am an objectivist broadly, and that came from there. So,
That's why I define it differently, right? In my
oh,
personal
oh,
sense, I
okay.
define it someone who's advocating for for the survival and flourishing of Hindu civilization. Now, people
But
don't know. There's a
that
very
can
nice
be
catch there.
anybody. That can be anybody.
Exactly, exactly. It doesn't have to I can say I am a Zionist, right? Despite me being not a Jew and be
Oh,
not
okay.
caring
So
about
you're
Israel.
defining it in that sense, but then you
Yeah,
don't. Fine. Like let's not debate that. That's
yeah, on
uh,
an ideological basis. Again, this
mhm,
this definition has been scrutinized by my mentors who believe a lot in Savarkar. They say
mhm,
that hey, you don't. So that's why I say right. By this logic, anyone believing in democracy is not like a constitutional republic is not a Hindu because
mhm,
he's thinking. And
mhm.
anyone believing in wearing shirts and pants is not a Hindu.
Exactly.
So
And to me, that is very stupid. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
That see, rather than being born, I can understand because it's a geographical marker. But
Mhm.
ideas, someone believing in external ideas, it just it's meant to exclude rather than you get the idea. It's meant to exclude Abrahamic
It's
religion than to
right. It's like
Buddhist.
it's trying to like, oh no, we have to like it's protectionism, but of ideas. It's like no, we
Yeah,
only
yeah, yeah.
right.
That
So
doesn't
like,
stand. So
yeah,
someone has to advocate strongly for Hindu civilization. So that's why the reason, right? A guy for Archaeological Survey of India who discovered the Ram Janmabhoomi temple, that hey, there was a temple underneath this mosque structure. He was a Muslim guy. So but he actually concretely proved ki you can literally see the temple structure. You can see these formations here. This is the Hindu architecture. So then he was he followed integrity, and so he acted in that manner. So as long as he lets peaceful coexistence, he doesn't care if someone who's not Muslim lives properly. As
mhm,
long as he doesn't believe in these doctrines, he according to me is still a Hindu. So
right.
according to me at least. So this definition again will be scrutinized. But moving on, these
Mhm,
people. That's why I say southeast of Greece, there's a land underneath the Himalayas where people are actually very smart
yeah.
and they're thinking about philosophy. And these
Mhm,
people, that's why a blanket term I'll say, the Hindu people are thinking about individuals, are thinking about the nature of individual, thinking about man. And even if you, because it's a competing system, you will see lots of contradictions. Some
mhm,
people will say man's only purpose in life is to praise the God, praise deity, and act towards fulfilling virtue. Some
mhm,
people will say man's birth is one out of 84 lakh births. So
yeah.
appreciate man's birth. So
Mhm,
you see, and both of them are Hindus. So there's such a conflicting thinking out of them.
yeah.
So that's
But
why I say you will be able to find out thinkers that are very pro individual.
I
You
think
won't,
the
of course, find out any
best,
Aristotle explicitly.
yeah. I think the best we ever had was Cherkav. Am I pronouncing him right? Cherkav,
The
right?
Charvak, yeah,
Charvak.
Charvak is the
So sorry. I
Charvak is
always
the
butcher
closest
it.
to what you have. Anyways,
Yeah. And like,
Charvak is what you
yeah.
closest had
Like he,
to this thing, but you also had very logical reason, like literal Aristotle like schools in terms of logic.
mhm.
So
Okay. So
you
there was
also
some
had,
development of logic as well. Okay. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
very
as a
sophisticated.
system builder, Charvak was like he was atheistic in his metaphysics.
Ultra
Uh,
atheistic. He believed in material. He was a
yeah,
materialist, to quote unquote, complete
yeah.
materialist.
And there was like though he did not arrive at the eudaimonia principle, he was still a hedonist, but that's
Yeah,
way better than a self-sacrificer, right? So, uh,
yeah,
so
of course. The
yeah, so
problem why he didn't, that's why epistemology is important, right? The reason
yeah,
he didn't appear to eudaimonia is he never believed something like ideas existed. For
hmm,
him, the only valid method of knowledge was perception.
yeah,
And you'll see how religious people, no matter what you think, when they sit down to think, some of them are very like, complete geniuses.
yeah,
And exactly,
abstractions, right? Like
yeah,
yeah, they
a
deal in
very,
abstractions. Yeah,
yes. So a very important religious figure picked it up and demolished his hedonism based on this, because he said when you say there's no valid means of knowledge except perception, you're actually making an inference. So you're actually using something called reason. So you go wrong there.
yeah.
So
It's
and
like
man, I'll by the end I'll make you understand and feel the contradiction that I've been feeling. So I'll just pull out a book for our viewers to see. And
yeah,
these are two books that I believe every reader who's interested in Indic philosophy should read because they're pretty good books. Just a second.
okay.
Okay, you're back. These are two books that I want every Indic philosopher to read. Philosopher interested in Hindu thinking or Indian thinking in general should read. This is a very modern book. As you can see, it's a concise history of critical survey of Indian philosophy by Sharma, and it's a very nice book because this is the where I understood Charvak on a superficial level from, and
Mhm.
I also understood the as Western civilization has a duality or a war between two forces,
Plato and
Indian
Aristotle.
civilization also has a war
Okay.
between two forces. Not just it's and unfortunately it's collective versus collective, but even within those collectives, there are better. According to me, there's a
Yeah,
relatively
yeah,
better
of
one.
course, of course. Yeah.
And there's there, and there's of course these materialistic elements in there, and this is the writer of one of those better elements. So this is the Sarvadarshan Sangra, which was written, I think, 700, 800 years ago. And the writer, Sri Madhvacharya. So the actual name is Madhav and Madhav Acharya. So Madhvacharya, he's called colloquially by out of reverence. So I'll start by saying, what is this duality? What is this fight that defines individual in? And I don't think anyone would have seen this fight in this respect because
Yeah.
it defines the nature of God and the universe. So it's a metaphysical fight,
It's a
but it
metaphysics.
defines but it calls for some radical elements. And as we go in history, in further in history, you'll see how both of them contradict each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so remember my point, and it's going to be a cluster F from now on. So the reason is the duality that exists is the duality between Advaita and Dvaita. Now, what does Advaita mean?
Wouldn't
Yeah.
you first want to go into Plato and Aristotle and how that ties into this?
No, no. I see. I assume Plato. Okay, if I were, yeah, shall I? I'll describe the duality between Plato and Aristotle. So if I were to simply describe the duality between Plato and Aristotle is, Plato thinks, there are perfect forms, and for the world of forms is completely different from the world of concretes,
Uh,
and
give me a second.
yeah.
I think uh, let me do this one. Let me do this one. So, uh, I would first of all uh, say something completely off track, but it connects. So, let me know what you think of it. First of all, the way I think of civilizations is broadly, it's not really, how most normies would describe it. It's like, by normie, I mean non philosophical people. It's like, it's like they'll be like, okay, these people follow the same language or the same religion or something like that. No, 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 no. I would say civilization is a region where uh, there is philosophical discourse going on. So you could say that there is such a thing as European civilization because the Europeans were in constant contact with each other and they were in philosophical discourse. So there's the Germans with like Hegel and Kant, there's the French with Descartes, there's the British with Locke, there's the Russians with various people as well, so on and so forth. And but these people constantly talk to each other, even if they have contradictory ideas. Same with the Arabians, which later became the Muslims. Same with the Indians or Hindus, as you will. The problem is that why these bound, and same with the Chinese, right? The East Asians, I would say. And so these were like the problem is that there was very little intercommunication. So right, Charkov was not discoursing with Aristotle, like so, you know
Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
yeah, and so uh, base on the basis of these philosophical battles, certain parts of the world were formed, and basically it was the I believe it was just the race to where Aristotle would be born, and that part of the world would dominate, right? And through basically the Greeks being pretty good in thought, I think it was a fair chance that Aristotle would be born either in Greece, India, or China. The Greeks won
Yeah.
out. Yeah, right. The Greeks won
we
out.
would have we would have produced another Aristotle easily if we would have had the internet very easily, because if you were
Nowadays
like
there is no civilization. By the way, I believe this now that like different talking about different civilizations is a thing of the past because now because of the internet there is
yeah,
universal
it's
communication.
unity of the internet. I agree
Yeah,
these
now it's a
fictitious
world civilization.
differences are
Yeah, whether you like it or not, it's world civilization. Get over it. So you know,
I have to
like
agree.
And so, though the Chinese are still in self-imposed isolation, so apart from
No, but
self-imposed,
and this doesn't mean you have to let go of all the cultural traits. You have
of
to, you
course,
can touch, yeah.
carry the best forward. You carry the best
Exactly.
forward and give it
It
to
just
everyone.
means that
Yeah.
people, these protectionists mean think that hey, the worst of them is imposed on the best of you. No,
Oh yeah.
well, it's best versus best and it's worst versus worst. So only
It's like
the
you take the best from everyone. You take
yes, that
Arabian
that should be the
perfume,
approach.
you take Arabian perfumes, Indian jewelry and saris, and you take Western thought. Like you take the best, right? As like
Parts
a,
of the Western thought, really. Again,
of
parts of
course,
the Western
no,
thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, kill Kant. So
No, no, not just still can't like the
I know.
Aristotelian line. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The Aristotelian line, I'll say. Like after Aristotle, I think
Aristotle
I
and
personally like Voltaire. I like Voltaire a lot. And
Mhm.
post Voltaire, there's yeah, of course you wouldn't like Voltaire, but then there's Nietzsche also. I like Rand in the
There are
Western canon.
elements of it. Yeah, there are elements of.
And as a system of life, I have included a lot of neo-Kantians also from the Hindu thinkers that I personally follow too. But
Mhm.
despite being an objectivist,
I mean, well,
so
Mises was a neo-Kantian, so like it depends on what you
exactly,
like. It
yeah,
depends on what.
Rand, yeah, Rand should like be. You have to always in politics you have to make the least first choice, and
Yeah. Mhm.
you shouldn't stop. You shouldn't get into ideological purity test on the battlefield. you
Yeah,
sh-
yeah.
you should do that in different venues. So
Uh,
we went on a
so
tangent, but your point is
both are
right.
important, right? So I would say both are important. Ideological purity tests, they create your vanguard, they create your people. But of course, when you're out on the voting block, you choose the least worst choice because that moves you towards the ideal, right? Or at least staves off disaster for 10 more years, let's say, so that you could potentially get there. And so, you know, uh, coming back to this, so in Western thought, right? In Western thought, because Aristotle was born there, there was the religious, metaphysically religious, epistemologically mystic, ethically collectivist axis, which was the Platonic axis. Later became the Platonic Kantian axis, and then there is the
But I'll
broadly.
also tell you one thing.
Mhm.
By ethically collectivist access, Kant was an effective altruist if you were to take it.
Yeah,
Kant isn't the pure altruist that some objectivists think of him.
sure,
Kant
sure.
is actually a classical liberal. Kant is
He
a free
lays the
marketeer.
groundwork. He lays the
Yeah.
groundwork, right? Like he lays the
Kant
ground.
is, but Kant politically is one of the strongest free marketeers you'll ever find. And that's the reason he gives that for is it actually lifts all boats up. And it lifts the boats of the collective. And it's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
But
But like that's the thing. Like
yeah.
Kant might not have realized it, but he lays the groundwork to destroy capitalism. Right?
So
And so,
that's why I think you should, I also would personally accord a bit more benefit of doubt to our ancestors because
Mhm.
as I said, they lived in isolated ghettos and
Exactly. Yes, yes. Mhm.
philosophy literally was a like a hermit's thing back in the time.
Yeah.
At least in Hindu civilization was certainly like that.
Mhm.
So Charvak's not. That's why Charvak isn't treated as a philosopher because Charvak. What is Charvak saying essentially? Let
Mhm.
go of all religion. Let's just
Mhm.
enjoy life. That's
Yeah.
essentially his
Yeah.
entire point of view. So you won't be able to call him an Aristotle, right? Aristotle's
Yeah.
making a sophisticated case. He's
Yes.
making all these things. So
Yeah.
that's why I'll point out to you altruist Aristotle, unfortunately, because people who have come close to out of volition, they come close to individualism. But
Yeah.
because they live in such an isolated environment, they are not able to
Yeah.
let go of that.
Yeah. They're not able to benefit from the Aristotelian line over there. And so, the Aristotelian line, which is, we just defined the Platonic Kantian axis, and then there is the, Aristotelian axis, the Aristotelian Randian axis, objectivist axis.
Whatever. Yeah, yeah.
And so which is metaphysically this worldly reality focused, epistemologically rational, reason focused, and that reason is a means of our senses are valid, reason is our means of knowledge and survival, and thus ethically you know egoistic versus altruistic, and individualist instead of collectivist. So that
True.
and so the race to get Aristotle, which was fundamentally the race which determines which civilization rules the world eventually, was a race between Greece, India, and China, and the Greeks won out. Right now, was this? due to pure chance, or was this due to there being, some better elements in Greek culture? I don't know enough about to debate that. So you could, if you want, you could say something about that. But the Greeks, like, everything good about.
I think it was attitude differences, and we'll come to that on a philosophical basis. The Hindus and I think to some extent the Chinese also didn't
Mhm,
think a lot about, like, there's in Sanskrit there's a phrase called ihalok and
mhm,
parlok. So ihalok means this
mhm.
world, and parlok means the other world or the divine world.
Yeah,
So ihalok is basically the last thing that these people are thinking about.
yeah. They don't think about
No,
this.
yeah, so they are only thinking about how do I serve the deity, and
Yeah,
that's why I say if you have to learn reverence, right, learn it from the Hindus. The
yeah,
Hindus have such reverence for such things. Like,
mhm.
Hindus are not really worshipping a cow. Hindus are worshipping the intent behind the cow.
Yeah,
Hindus are worshipping. You won't realize it, but Hindus are actually worshipping human benefit and human flourishing. But
mhm.
they won't phrase it like that because it won't be socially acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. I know, I know. But like, I have this joke. It's like, show me a thing, and I will show you a Hindu which worships it. So it's a it's a joke, but
Yeah. No, and it's true. And it's not that, like, there's literally a day to worship everything around you that
yeah,
gives you benefit.
exactly. Like there is literally is a day to worship everything. Yeah, and like, China had Lao Tzu, which was pretty good in politics. He was a very good individualist, but even China didn't get its Aristotle. China was very, but China was dominant for a while, so there might be something there. There might be something there. I don't
It's
know.
again, it's political power, right? And there will be, I'll show you in Maratha thinking also and in Hindu thinking also, lots of thinkers that come close to it,
Yeah, no,
despite
but
being
the Chinese
mystics.
were for a while,
Yeah,
like,
there will be.
technologically doing well. So
See,
like,
you have to accept one thing. There won't be an Aristotle, like a copy of Aristotle, because Aristotle himself is a unique, he's a genius,
yeah,
right? On the other
you can't
hand,
match it.
yeah,
You
on
can't
the other
match it.
hand, there will be people who come close to it for
Yes,
human flourishing,
yeah,
and you also wouldn't be able to compare them. And comparison between Aristotle is just a barometer we fixed, but
yes,
to compare anyone with him is unfair to both Aristotle and the other person, because he
yes,
did not have Greek access. First of all,
yeah.
he lived in
Mhm.
some ghetto. He's fighting wars for survival. Aristotle is living in Greece, one of the very kind of stable, despite him facing political problems too, it's kind of a stable time. And he's the student of Plato, like himself, the great philosopher himself. So
Mhm.
he has a lot of access. Some people
Yeah,
dying there, he has to fight wars, he has to serve in a king's court, and
and
lots
he's
of
a genius
things.
himself. Like, yeah, it's almost a perfect storm with Aristotle, and of course, you can't equal his accomplishment. Once Aristotle once reached, cannot be reached again. Like, it's done.
Exactly,
It's done.
exactly. Because
Mhm.
he's defining civilization, right?
Yeah,
He's creating civilization. And so that being said, this is the war between Aristotle and Plato, or the
the best.
mystic axis versus the individualistic rationalistic axis,
Yeah,
rationality axis, right?
rationality. Yeah.
So in Hindutva or in Hinduism, now I'll come to Hinduism because it's a religious system.
Mhm.
In Hinduism, on a philosophical level, see, on a deity level, you will have 10,000 deities,
Mhm.
but it all boils down to a metaphysical battle, and the metaphysical battle is between Dvaita or duality and Advaita, not non-duality. What does Advaita? I'll start with Dvaita. What does Dvaita mean? Dvaita was the first thing that came, and Dvaita you'll agree with.
Mhm.
Dvaita says the deity you are worshipping and you are two separate entities.
Mhm.
Period. And you have to worship it in, like, in the Gita. There's multiple methods. In different other systems, different methods, either by gyan or by knowledge or accepting to earning that knowledge, either by bhakti, by devotion, by pleasing it, or by actions that actually interest, or actions that are conclusive to virtue, actions that are conducive to karma, actions that are conducive to
Work.
earth or meaning, value. So you have to do this and you have to gain that deity. So this is nearly deism, right? This is
Yeah,
basically, this is closer to deism.
yeah.
The problem with this says, this gives you lots of carrots. This says if you do this in the next life, you will get this, like you'll be rich, you'll be famous. Like it's very closer to the, this is the classical religion.
Mhm.
And if you don't do this, you will go hell and all these things. Now, because it has defined boundaries. Now, like, this is you, this is your being, this is your soul. Again, there's a ghost in the shell, unfortunately. But then there's your deity, but you are separate. Existence exists. You do exist. The world is not a myth.
Mhm.
And do these things so that you do that. So it becomes a kind of a strict thinking, right? It's a well defined boundary. But because now come social hierarchies into picture, you know, don't touch a cat because it's impure or something like that. So it becomes caught up in traditions and rituals and hierarchies.
Mhm.
So what happens is, because the hierarchies become, it becomes caught up in hierarchies. Then comes Buddhism. So Buddhism lets go of all hierarchies, and Buddhism declares, you are suffering a lot because of rituals and hierarchies. Buddhism
Good.
basically says the world is suffering. So that's literally Buddhism says desire is the cause of suffering. Don't have desires, you won't suffer. So I'm not kidding. You can read it up.
Yeah, like two things to say that. Like it's like how do you end desire? Like you just kill yourself right there. That ends all desire, right? So like
No, it's just you become enlightened, and you come an extent where even though like it's basically strikes is to, and I agree, like I find merit in that too. Like it's a near stoic argument. Ki
Mhm.
you should reign in your desires. Don't act either. You let desires go like emotions, like
Mhm.
like those wild emotions that you have. Let them go. You keep them in control, and you don't act on it, so you won't suffer. Or uh, use that, never have any desires. So even Buddha acknowledged that isn't possible, but
Mhm.
Buddha is treated as enlightened being because he has those desires. And again, I don't mean to insult any religion, but this is not, of course, a fun way to say it. Of course, there's a huge nuance to this. They define suffering, value, this world, that world very
See,
differently.
when I say,
And
like by the way, like there's the a small issue on the insult and religion. But I'm not insulting. I'm arguing, right? I'm saying, okay,
yeah,
you tell me to do this. Let's see where it leads to, right? And if
yeah.
the yeah. Mhm. And so
True, true. And like it is one, of course, you will find these arguments. See, we live in politically turmoil times, and we have to insert these disclaimers for if someone politically insensitive is watching this.
yeah,
This doesn't mean we are insulting
exactly.
any Buddhist or Buddhist thinking.
No,
It's
no,
it's a
no.
chain,
It's
it's a
like
train of
it's an
thought.
argument. It is a sign of respect. I would be
I'm
insulting you.
considering I'm
Because
considering your argument seriously enough
yes,
to think about it. So
because if I'm not arguing with you, then I'm saying that you are so lack of any brains that I will not waste time on you. But if you're giving me an argument and I'm saying, okay, this problem or this problem or this problem, that is a sign of respect. That is me saying that you are a person worthy of talking to, right?
exactly. So
And
we thankfully we have inserted this disclaimer, and let's insert it at the start too.
yeah.
So that being said,
Mhm.
we also have to think about this pretty carefully. That okay, Buddhism actually does make huge strides in the letting go of some social hierarchies,
Yeah.
and but the problem is through the traditional Hindus. The argument that is put that through the traditional Hindus, people moved away from Hindus, right? People moved away from traditionally Hindu deities. People moved away from these scenarios, and then they came towards started moving away to Buddhism.
Yeah.
And
It reminds
to
me,
yeah,
it reminds me of the classical pre-Randian dichotomy, pre-Ayn Rand dichotomy in the West, which was, you know, there are two schools. There's the intrinsic and there's the subjective, right? And so,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So
there's
it
gonna
was
be,
pretty close to this. So what
yeah,
happened is recognizing this need of, like, if Hindus don't reform as of now, Hinduism
mhm,
wouldn't have existed. So
yeah,
there's
it would have been
there's
Buddhist.
yeah,
Mhm,
there's a story that goes by that Lord Shiva himself apparently took birth in the Malabar, and like of course this is a poetic story, but
mhm,
a guy by the name of one of Shiva's names, Shankara. So he goes
mhm.
to the north and he starts
Shankaracharya?
debating with these, yes, and he
Yes.
starts debating with these different denominations. So he defeats one of the Dvaitins called Madana Mishra in the north, and
Mhm.
he tries and he shows that hey, these distinctions you see around us are merely illusions. And yeah, that's an actual argument. These
Yeah,
distinctions
yeah.
you see around us are illusions.
No,
We are
no.
all parts of an
Yeah, yeah,
entity, of a higherly conscious entity.
yeah.
Now, You may laugh at this now, but I'll
No, no,
show
no.
you.
I'm not
No, no,
laughing. I'm not
no,
laughing
no.
because of that.
You
I'm
may, you
laughing
may
because I see, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's the same argument happening all
exactly.
across the
It's the
world in all
Plato.
of
It's
history,
that. It's
right?
Plato. It's Plato
Yeah,
that's
it's
come.
Plato again. You're like, hello, Mr. Plato. Once again, I meet
Yeah,
you.
it's Plato that's come.
Yeah.
Funny enough, you'll see Plato arguing for individualism sometime later. So I'll tell you this much, okay?
Okay.
So this is where Adi Shankaracharya starts doing this and starts defeating all these uh, different thinkers and brings everyone back to Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you see, that's why he's called father of Advaita. And
Mm-hmm.
now Advaita literally means non-duality.
Yeah.
And you see how that
It's
there's this
the
conscious entity. We are all
yeah.
derivatives of this conscious entity.
Reminds me of
And
Plotinus, right? That
yeah, yeah,
there's the oneness, and that oneness is goodness itself, and it's that is God, and it's
exactly.
emanating, right?
That's
Like it's
literally that.
emanating light.
That's my story to say that there's this entity called the Brahman or the Brahman,
Brahma, yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
Brahm, yeah, and
yeah.
the Brahmans, we are all derivatives of it. And then he also says that practical life exists, of course, but
Mhm.
it's not the only existence. You have to go above it. He's
Yeah,
not like
it's the cave. We have come back
yeah,
to Plato's cave. Yeah.
yes, yes, yeah,
So
yeah,
India had its proper Plato then. So
proper
we
Plato,
yeah. Mhm. If
closest
only
to it.
he had a student. If only he had a student and he became
Yep,
Aristotle.
yep. And according to me, he kind of had.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
student came around some centuries later, and this very same guy, the guy who wrote Sarvadarshan Sangrah, who revived Dvaita and said,
Mhm.
hey, actually existence does exist. There's
Mhm.
two schools. And funny enough, the first person this guy discusses and demolishes is Charvak.
Mhm.
And he demolishes Charvak. I am not discussing Charvak as such here because despite him being closest to our school of thinking, Charvak is an atheist. Charvak believes in existence. Charvak does not believe in God. Charvak believes in material
He didn't have a
pleasure.
proper
None of these,
theory, right?
none of
He couldn't defend
none of these
anything.
people do. Yeah, it's hedonism. It's basically
Yeah,
frustrated hedonism, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
Yeah, he's just saying, guys, please shut the hell up. Come on, this world exists. But that's not an argument, right? Like he's not properly arguing, right?
exactly. On the
Mhm.
other hand, Madhva, he considers him serious enough to discuss him.
Yeah.
So you have to appreciate the intellectual honesty here,
Mhm.
because this person, despite being a radical thinker of God, like a person of God, is
Mhm.
discussing a radical atheist and he's giving him importance.
Of course.
So that's
I have a lot of respect, by the way. Like, and this is there's this person called Biblical Anarchy, and he's a Christian anarcho-capitalist, and like he's not just a superficial Christian. He's a deep Christian. Like he's a, I believe, father himself. Like they call in Christianity, like he's a priest himself, and
yeah.
you know, like even though I disagree with him on the ideas, like he is honest and he wants to debate and he wants to challenge and he wants to know, right? That there is there is intellectual honesty which can exist even among someone who might be philosophically misaligned with you, and I like to see that. Like I very much appreciate a lot of, like, even though I might disagree with them, even though I might think they're my enemies in a way, they're opposed.
They're my opponents.
Yes.
I make this distinction that as long as someone isn't advocating open violence, he is mistaken. This
Yeah,
is
but
my
yeah,
this is
but
my approach to life.
let's say their theories will lead to violence, right? Let's say, but even if they are advocating it.
Again, there's the emotional slash information gap there. Either
Mhm.
he's sticking onto his emotions, his literal meaning, and his literal, they are like the cause of his life. And if he demolishes them, he fears it so much that his life will end. Like there are, thieves like that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or he's
Yeah, those
someone.
people I don't respect, by the way. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you
I
know.
agree.
Like, if you care, and same about an individualist. Like, if you are afraid of debating your ideas because you have built your life around them, and like, what will I do if my belief system is gone? Then you don't really know your ideas. You're not confident in them, right? Like, then I don't want you on my team. Like, go join the other guys. You make them weaker, right?
True,
It's
true,
like,
true.
and
But yeah, so Madhvacharya basically tries to talk on Advaita. But
Mhm.
again, you see the dichotomy and why people are attracted to Dvaita.
Hmm?
Advaita. I mean, Adi Shankaracharya. Why is he the
Yeah, yeah.
greatest Hindu? Why is he the greatest?
It's
The problem is,
it's the pure. It's the pure, right? Like it's the
yeah,
pure
and like
distilled version.
on the spiritual axis, it's the pure, and on the
Hmm?
practical axis, Adi Shankaracharya is not telling people to drink water only once a day or something like that. So like,
Hmm?
he's not he's not ritual bound.
Yeah.
He is bound to in a spiritual plane.
Hmm?
So for the Dvaitin or for someone who believes in duality or rituals matter, that separate entity matters, these things matter. For
Hmm?
the Advaitin, in the end, you have to unify. It's not you have to go near him. It's you have to unify.
Yeah.
And the way to unify is actually think about him, actually remember his name. So he reduced ritualism.
Hmm?
The claim that I hear strongly is Adi Shankaracharya is a political man. He tried, he was a Dvaitin, he was a closeted Dvaitin. But because he saw that Hinduism needed social reform, he did that. That's
Hmm?
the claim I actually hear. So if history would have actually seen that, while preserving Dvaita, if Adi Shankaracharya would have reduced the ritualism, we would have seen an Aristotle. I do not doubt it.
Yeah.
I simply do
Uh,
not doubt it.
mhm.
Because you see where this is going, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you and me, we are radical atheists, we are supposedly Brahmins who eat meat. I think you eat meat, right? So
Uh, I so like I have like a whole thing, like in the sense that, uh, okay, I guess I can talk about it here, in a brief way, which is that, uh, see, I really like animals. I've always grown up around them. So like, especially the more developed animals, like like
horse and dogs and all.
horse, dogs, cows, pigs, like things that, like, I can see that, okay, like this thing is, what like this thing like will feel pain and like it screams and everything. I don't like that. I personally just am emotionally repulsed by that, so I don't eat that. Though, I draw the line at fish. Like I if I'm really hungry, I'll eat fish, right? And below the
Do
fish,
you do you eat chicken?
no, like it's too emotional for me, right? I've kept
Ah,
I've kept birds. I will eat eggs though, you know.
so you're basically an vegetarian, what you'd call.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
okay, at least I am a meat
I have
eating.
I eat eggs. I eat prawns. I can eat lobsters. Like things, like insect-like things. I don't care about them. Like they don't have a central nervous system. They're robots for all I care. They're basically
For
like
you,
plants.
for you, it's an emotional gap, right? For me,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
it's a protein gap. So if I get protein, I'll stop eating meat too.
yeah. I mean,
So
same thing. Lab-grown meat. By the way, I'm a big proponent of lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat comes around, I'm eating everything, right? So
exactly, that's not an issue. As long as it's safe, hygienic, like I don't care. So that
yeah,
being said,
it's
despite
coming
us
from
being
my love for
yeah,
animals. Basically, love for.
yeah,
I find them
despite
cute. I
hmm,
find them cute. That's it. And
despite us being these
there
atheistic
is a logical argument I can make, which is very narrow, which will not justify my position, but will justify a position, which is that, given that you have, let's say, a choice between killing an animal or gaining the same taste, nutrition, etc., without killing, let's say lab-grown meat, then the ethical position is not killing, because then you are killing just for the sake of killing. That's destruction for the sake of destruction. That's not.
yeah, it's effective. This same argument is put by who's the effective altruism guy.
It's not
Some
all. I'm not arguing from the altruist base. I'm saying that.
he also argues from the pain perspective only.
No, no, no. Like the pain thing is my personal emotional thing. But what I'm arguing in the, let's say, chicken, right? There are two ways to get chicken. One is the lab grown variety, one is the killed variety. Let's say the cost is the same, the taste is the same, the everything is the same. And if you're choosing the killed variety, then you are just endorsing, killing the chicken for no value, right? That's just no value added, just kill the thing. And
Yeah, exactly.
that to me is that's nihilism. That's destruction for the sake of destruction.
Ending,
That is,
ending life for the sake of it, right? if
yeah, yeah,
if lab grown meat is genuinely either superior or the same quality, then there's no
yeah.
point in killing
And
chickens.
like then if a person goes
Of
ahead
course,
and
this is in isolation to everything. This is in isolation to people who are like butchers, khandani butchers, like
mhm.
their livelihood, their industry,
Okay,
that entire industry, that entire supply
okay,
chain gets disrupted.
okay,
So
okay.
you have to look into you
Yeah.
have to look into everything now.
So
So that
just
being
to
said,
finish it up.
uh,
So where the effective altruists might be coming from a pain angle, I don't consider that, because animals, they're not rational beings. They don't have rights. I might have an emotional thing with them because I find them cute, but that's my thing. That's not universalizable. But on the all else being equal access, all I'm saying is that destruction of something where there is no need of it, like there is no value gained to justify it. That would be like someone going to the park and just plucking all the flowers and throwing them to the ground. That's nihilism. That's destruction of life, destruction of beauty for the sake of it, right? And so that's destruction of values for the sake of what? Emotional sadism. Like I would say that is anti-objectivist, that is anti-egoist, that's against your self-interest, because you are
True,
giving the signal to your own psychology that destruction is a good thing, and that would be wrong for yourself to do.
true,
And on the people with butcher businesses, and so like free markets, do something else. We learn to code.
true, true. Right, true, of course. But
If you
like,
get
if that
outcompeted, you
if
get outcompeted. Come on,
again,
like
that's the argument, right? Ki if you
it's the
have to preserve
Basquiat
that
candle
business,
makers. It's the
yeah,
Basquiat
yeah,
candle
true.
makers.
What about preserving a business? That can also be rational thinking, right? Rather
Yeah, but
than
do it. Do it on the market. If you get outcompeted, like switch to lab grown meat, right? You could switch to lab grown meat. Like who cares?
true.
But I do think within the next 20 years, lab grown, not 20, let's say 50. Within the next 50 years, lab grown meat will replace most animal things. So I find the point moot. Uh, so go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So now we come back to so the basically so you see, despite us being these kind of we are radical by most societal norms, right? So this
Yep.
us being uh
Mhm.
non-veg, me, I am a non-vegetarian,
I'm as well. Like,
non-believer.
yeah, yeah.
My
So most seafood, eggs.
yeah, yeah. So right. So non-vegetarian Brahmins who don't believe in God, don't believe in rituals. We
Mhm.
are agreeing more with Dvaita, which is hyper ritualistic, hyper God believing, God centric worldview. Aside from Advaita, if you're more likely, like if I were to give an example, if you go to Sringeri or Puri, or these are the four centers that Shankaracharya established and debated with lots of people. So if you're more likely to walk in Sringeri, go to the actual Shankaracharya, who's the actual descendant of Shankaracharya, who's actually running the place, talk with him, debate with him on exactly these things. Should I be a vegetarian? Should I not be a vegetarian? On the other hand, if you go to Dvaita place, either Udupi, you're much more likely they won't even entertain you. They're more interested in rituals and stuff like that. But on a philosophical basis, I am agreeing more with Dvaita than Advaita. So this is a very these are the contradictions that make up Hindu
Yeah.
culture, unfortunately,
Because
because
the Advaita people are still philosophically minded, even if they're Platonists, right? Like they're at least thinking.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
one step
And
that
so
Advaita.
so so on, Advaita is also thinkers. Like Shankaracharya is literally called the greatest logician of all time because
Yeah.
he makes these symbolic structures, and his logic, by the way, is very similar to Aristotle. Again,
Yeah.
philosophy is a big structure, so his logic is very similar to Aristotle. So
Convergent.
you,
You know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, that's what I think, because uh like there is an objective reality, right? We're objective. So there, as long as a person is thinking and trying to reach certain conclusions, keeping objective reality in mind, they're going to reach similar conclusion. It's a convergence, right? It's a convergence of
You
ideas.
you will converge. You will converge somewhere or the other. But again, if Adi Shankaracharya, I don't even need to say if Adi Shankaracharya had the internet, he would have been a greater person than Aristotle
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
he
I mean, if
it is
Aristotle
a
had
exactly both.
yeah,
Either of them had the internet, they would have been
yeah,
surprisingly like the world would have been better,
yeah.
significantly
Imagine if,
better.
if we didn't have the internet, like I would have still been a normie Brahmin. You would have still been a normie Brahmin because that's the book we have. That we got
Exactly.
nothing, right?
Exactly.
Like
Not just like foreign trade, like lots of stuff. So these are the if we wouldn't have either capitalism or internet, if we lived 800 years back, we would have been normies, right?
yeah,
There,
with no option, right? Mhm.
so we never. I never blame my ancestors for things that they did. I
Exactly.
of it,
It's like trying to say, Aristotle was not, Aristotle didn't discover the atomic theory, or Aristotle was not an
yeah,
anti-Atom.
like, exactly. Or Aristotle didn't even like property or republics or stuff like that. So you
Yeah,
can't
it's like,
you
come on, man. Like, you gotta view things in a historical perspective. It's like, why was the first person who evolved as a human being from an ape not perfectly Ayn Rand? Like, things take time to figure out.
exactly. The
You know,
problem is then there's the opposite side of problem. Yeah, I like one thing about him, so I'm going to worship every other thing about him. That's just that side is also stupid. So
Yeah.
you're not supposed to do that either. Yeah,
Mhm.
but so basically this duality forms the crux of Hinduism. Ism. Now I can say ism properly because this is the religious side of it.
Mhm.
And in it you see tricklets of proto-individual thinking. So you see Charvak, you see these things. Now, now that philosophical basis has been defined, this is the dominant thinking of the Hindus. And modern day Hindus, 80% of them are Advaitins who believe
Mhm.
that there is one supreme consciousness. We are all parts of it, and even God themselves. You are while you're worshiping God, you are actually worshiping that supreme consciousness. So that
Mhm.
supreme consciousness has taken different forms. You're worshiping that supreme consciousness itself. That's why
Yeah.
you're doing all these things.
It's
Uh,
Plato's world of forms, right? Like the
yes,
Indian deities, they're
and it's
Plato's world of
also on the other hand, it's also closer to Deism.
forms. Uh-huh.
Think about it. So
Mhm.
in that aspect, it's also closer to Deism. But
Mhm.
because Deism doesn't say the word is illusion, right? If as long as if it stops at the word is a delusion, and it also doesn't say that because it's so huge, there's competing systems in it. So
Mhm.
some Advaitins say, that entity is always participating in worldly affairs. Some Advaitins say, no, the entity is just here. So some Advaitins say, you can't perceive the entity. So it's a huge school of thought. But 80% roughly believe in this, and roughly 10 to 20% believe in
Yeah.
Dvaita. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that being said, now we have conclusively demonstrated what the dominant thinking of the Hindu, the religious Hindu, is. So moving on, now we'll decide how political systems took place. So roughly said, the political systems in India. I'll start with the more like you can always think about the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, lots of importance has been given to property, to cows, to these elements that you'd like. But again, the individual as such, as an entity, does not exist.
Mhm. And
You
it's
you
also
move on. Yeah.
duty ethics. There's a karm karo fal ki apeksha mat karo, which translates to
Yeah, it
do
comes
good.
later. Yeah, it comes in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah,
But
let me translate that for the mostly US audience that I get. So
yeah,
hopefully this video breaks into the Indian market as well. So you know, uh, that phrase means do your duty and worry not about the reward. Well, why then should a person do their duty, right? Like why
because the
and
duty, I,
Mhm.
I were to say, what if I were to put it in a different sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, and though people don't explore this aspect. What if your duty is the reward? What
Mhm.
if your ability to duty itself is a privilege and a reward? It's like saying, if I were to it, and it also doesn't mean don't care about worldly desires. Again,
Mhm.
interpret it because it's a religious text. The interpretations can be wildly different. One aspect says don't care about worldly desires, don't care about material gain. Other
Mhm.
school of thought says your it's an abstract. The duty that you're doing, the task, and the duty word also is subject to change. The task that you're doing, that itself, what if it's the reward? What if it's closer to worshipping God than sitting in front of an idol and doing all things that you want to do? Again,
Yeah,
Advaita into action. So this is the
that
Advaitin definition.
yeah, that can be the other thing, right? Like sure, like you could interpret it that way. I can see it. Like the word karma, it can mean duty, but it can also just mean plain old work, right?
Yeah, task. Any task
Yeah.
that you do.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. So there is a way of interpretation that's far more conducive to our kind of worldview. I can grant, but like
Yes.
within
I read an
within.
argument that if you read the Bhagavad Gita properly, it will lead you to liberalism. There's a
Hey,
very strong
no,
Guru
I
Charandas
just
literally
laugh.
says that.
When I laugh, I usually laugh at interesting, like it like it
Yeah, you
intrigues.
should.
I'm not laughing
Laughing is
at the
not
idea.
useful.
Like
No, no, of course not.
if it does, that's great. There is a person on Twitter called Rangraj. I haven't read his full proof, but I think he arrives at argumentation ethics through the Mahabharata. So, you know, uh, there is work to be done. Like, and of course, like the depth
By the
of.
way, we had total free speech, by the way.
Mhm.
And it's codified in Hindu religion that there's a little book called Natya Shastra, which basically
Mhm.
means art of theater. And in
Mhm.
it, there's a big story. Salman Rushdie keeps saying it fully. So there's a big story that once the gods were insulted because some theater performed something very badly, and so gods came and rushed, and Indra, the king of the gods, had to intervene, and he had to literally come on the stage of theater, and he had to whisper some mantras and stuff like that, and he had to accord it divine right that the theater is a divine place, and you can say anything you want.
Hmm.
So literally anything, and even for me, Indra literally gave full rights.
Gotta
So
buy me some
this
theater.
yeah, yeah. So there's a literal. So we have complete free speech, and as I said, Hinduism is a big spectrum. So you will have people saying marrying more than once is a great sin, and you will have polyamorous sages also. So it's a big spectrum, and free speech may not be always exercised too. But yeah, so these are the thinking. So right from Mahabharata, Ramayana, then we move on to a lot of ancient kingdoms that existed, and then there's the Janpadas, there's the Magad empires, then we have literal republics, but they aren't really republics; they are direct democracies and full majority. So of course, no individualism is not that common. But you see these thinkers coming, and you see a lot of changes happening at the start of the Mauryan Empire, which I think is one of the most important empires and political systems India had. So the precursors of the Mauryan Empire were two. One was Chanakya, and the other was Chandragupta Maurya. So Chandragupta Maurya is the political action, like he's the George Washington, quote unquote, and the Chanakya is the Ben Franklin. So Chanakya is basically deciding Arthashastra, or part of economy, and Sanjeev Sanyal basically says that this is a classical liberal document.
Hmm.
It is Sanjeev Sanyal's claim that Arthashastra is a classical liberal document
Hmm.
defining statecraft, defining economy, and how entities should function.
Yeah, I've heard some arguments against that though. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the answer for that is, as I said in the start, India as a country, the idea of statism is foreign. The reason is, as I said, it's a hyper decentralized governance,
Mhm.
and the village by itself is a self-sufficient entity,
Mhm.
right? So that's why you will see everything talking at the village level. No one's talking at the individual level. Why? Because the individual is only reporting what's the world of the individual. It's the village, and the village dynamics are religious in nature. Like
Yep.
there's social hierarchy. There's either a caste or there's a family history. Caste can also be, by the way, malleable. Varna is not malleable, but so these things are very malleable things.
Yeah.
Now then there's social dynamics that come to picture, but
You
the
know.
only relation the state has with the individual is a 10 to, like it depends, 10 to 50% tax for
Mhm.
military expenditure. That's it. Once I pay my taxes in the center, I don't care if the king is either Hindu, if the king is Muslim, if the king is Christian, Jewish. I don't care. That's the relation. It's a share of taxes, and then we move on to, so this is the share that, like, this is Mauryan Empire. Then further things start become centralized during Ashoka's time, because religion becomes intertwined with it. Then at the end of the Mauryan Empire, again, because Buddhism influence is very high, a Hindu king rises, and then he starts again talking about Hinduism. After Mauryan Empire, though, another actual Hindu empire that rises, that is the Gupta Empire.
Mhm.
Within the Gupta Empire, taxes are an all-time low. I'm
Mhm.
not kidding. Pick it up.
Mhm.
Taxes are very low. People are actually, like, it's literally called the golden age, and I am reading about it. It's called the imperial age of the Guptas.
Yeah, yeah. Which is some. There was a theory that I had in mind. There are these golden ages that civilizations can go through. There's the Islamic golden age. There's the Western golden age, which arguably ends at Kant, and
True,
there's the Chinese golden ages, and like they had like many periods of it in which there was rises and falls. The mandate of heaven theory, and
true,
so I have this theory, and of course, this has been I know about two, in the sense of the West and Islam, right? Uh, the Islamic Golden Age was when Aristotle was dominant in Islam, or at least was accepted in Islam. And when the clergy purged down on him, there was nothing to be done about it. Like the Muslims fell thereafter steadily. And in the West, I think it was after Aquinas that the Western Golden Age begins, right? And so, is there, I have this theory that when broadly Aristotelian ideas take form in a society, that's where its golden age is. And of course, it doesn't have to be
true,
Aristotelian, it has to be Aristotelian compared to the other ideas available, right? So
true,
in
true. True, exactly, and that's I can show it with proof that compared to the other systems, the Gupta Empire literally had that. So when Samudragupta came south of Narmada, he conquered everything, but he did not depose kings. He did not chop their heads as was the tradition. He said, "Be a king, pay me some share in taxes,"
Mhm.
and that's literally what he did. So
Yeah, basically,
again,
every Indian regime copied and pasted after that.
yep,
You know.
yep.
Mhm.
And this, no one started, everyone, because see, when you're crossing territories, when there's no communication, you wouldn't want to set up new institutions of your own, right? You would
Mhm.
simply want, hey, this is my control. I want revenue from a share of
Yeah.
revenue. You exist, I'll exist. Don't irritate me.
Mhm.
So that's exactly what used to happen.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, after the Gupta Empire, then again Gupta Empire became. Why I say it as a golden age is because aside from abstract golden age, like the ideas of Aristotle dominating, Aristotle ideas of Aristotle also become prevalent. Like the difference is because the general populace certainly does not give abstract ideas a lot of importance. The
Mhm.
minute it starts giving abstract ideas a lot of importance, it goes closer to material uh, prosperity too. When it
Mhm.
starts caring about human life, when it starts caring about its life, when it starts caring about this world, this earth, it goes closer to material pleasure. And that's basically what happened in Gupta Empire. Despite Hinduism being the prevalent thinking, we also have things that value material pleasure. We literally have a god for material wealth. We have a god for material pleasure. We have a god for sensual pleasure. We have gods for all these. So it does mean we value all these things. So we have a literal god for like the supreme god of the universe, Narayana, Vishnu, is the
Mhm.
god who is responsible for maintenance. He's not responsible for either for creation or destruction. The
Mhm.
supreme god is responsible for maintenance. And what does maintenance mean? So dynamic give and take, life, this world, this entity. So we
Yeah.
have gods to codify these
Yeah.
things.
And just as an aside, I read this somewhere. Now, this may be false, this may be true, I don't know. That in certain African countries, they don't have a word for maintenance. You know, and that might be an indicator to why certain areas in Africa are so underdeveloped because there's no concept, right?
True.
There's no concept of
Or
capital.
importance is given enough for these
Yes,
things. And
it's like if you don't have a word for it, you clearly don't care about that thing that much, right? Uh, you know, so
yeah,
of course,
exactly.
it might be wrong. I'm no expert in Africa, and
It,
if
it,
I'm
it
wrong,
might be it might be a crude indicator though, and
yeah,
it doesn't mean all Africans are like that, but like it's just a crude indicator. Ki,
it's a broad civilizational point, right? It's
yeah,
like
at the very least, you can say ki these are primitive systems where nomadic systems where maintenance civilization was not necessary. This doesn't
yeah,
mean Africans are like some
no,
subservient race, of course,
no,
but
no,
it just means ki okay, it may be an indicator of one thing. That being
yeah,
said, this was the rough trajectory of the Gupta Empire. Now, of course, all these empires itself, I can take an entire session, and that will be a bit difficult to understand. That will be more like a book or a paper. But
mhm,
after the Gupta Empire, you see things starting to change a bit. So the Chauhans gain control of Delhi, the Northern Empire. Then the Rathors come into picture. There's a lots of activity happening in Rajput and Rajputana. But
mhm,
around Delhi, there's then around that year, you see around the year 700, 800, you see invasion starting.
mhm,
Big invasions start coming in, and after the Greeks, of course, the Greeks invaded India.
mhm,
Alexander won the war against Porus, but he saw that this is not a conquerable territory, and I'll expend a lot of troops, and after expending, I won't be able to maintain because of course
yeah.
they'll overtake me,
Can
and
I
there's a yeah,
which is pressing on my mind, which is of course uh, so Alexander is a student of Aristotle, right?
yeah,
And like literally, no, I don't mean it in the way of he read Aristotle. Aristotle was his literal teacher, right?
yeah.
And it's like so, there's and he had interactions with India, of course, and through the Muslims, like we were at some point,
Not just through the Muslims. Alexander actually talks with the saints and sages of India.
yeah,
He actually valued debate a lot.
yeah. And through Alexander, through let's say the later Muslim influence carrying Aristotle, like why didn't Hindu philosophy pick up on Aristotle? Is there a reason?
It did. It did. I am telling you, there's lots of
Okay.
thinking, logic thinking. There's a little school called Naya School of
But
Thought, which is very similar to
is
Aristotle's
that
logic.
like authentically developed, or is that, let's say, a pickup from Aristotle?
Not just like it's both, right? No philosophy can be either completely copied or completely original,
No, no,
right? So
not
you
just
would have
copied.
some
Like
influence.
I'm imagining a world in which, let's say if there was even like five Aristotelians in India and they were just like they ran a little monastery somewhere, India would have been saved, right? Like, you know, you get what I'm saying?
I don't think that would have been the scenario because see, Indian political muscle changes a lot of things.
Hmm.
So the political muscle was always with the side of these Advaitins and these Vaitins and these religious people
Hmm.
than Aristotle himself. Yeah, in fact, Aristotle himself was co-opted by so many religious denominations, right?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
Christians
So,
co-opted him,
was there
Muslims
ever
co-opted him.
like a proper Aristotelian thought presence in India? Like not just
See,
approaching him.
no, I don't think so. In my reading, I haven't seen. And even if you do, in different sections, like you'll see some of his metaphysics somewhere. You'll see some
Hmm.
of his logic somewhere. You'll see some of his politics, actual politics somewhere. You'll see
Hmm.
some of his ideas somewhere. You wouldn't see a unified Aristotle anywhere, right? That's the
Yeah,
issue.
that's a big missed opportunity, right?
True, true. That's a civilization fault. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, you wouldn't see an Adi Shankaracharya somewhere in
Mhm.
the Greece. That's the reason, right? Every philosophy has to be developed in different places.
No, but just because of these interactions with first Alexander and then the
The
Muslims,
problem, the problem,
there could
man,
have been some.
the problem is the Hindus gave relatively very less importance to Ihalok, like this world. Even
Mhm.
if the Hindus would have considered this world worth fighting, worth defending, and later they do, you see you would have seen someone approaching Aristotle at least, the ranks of Aristotle at least,
Mm.
and that was the issue early on, and which the Hindus faced. I'll show you how they faced.
And that's
So
what, like, it is funny, which is like, uh, coming back to the Rand comment about the mystic muck. Like, the guys, listen, if you don't care about this world, don't be surprised when this world sucks, right?
exactly,
Exactly.
exactly, that's the
Right.
point, right?
It's
You
like,
have to
yeah,
make it better.
yeah, you don't care about this world, you get conquered and everything's dirty and everyone's poor, right? That's what it leads to. That's
And
why
that's what and I'll tell you how this contradiction that I said, right? The Advaitins will do miracles in the future, and I'll make a video out of it just describing the Advaitins. So anyways, after Alexander's invasions in the year 7, in the 7th 8th century, you see Arab invasions starting in, but they're repulsed. In the year 1000, like the 1000-ish AD, you see Mahmud of Ghazni invading and he is destroying the Somnath temple. So in the Quran, idol worship is a very bad sin and it must be condemned at every stage. To be a Muslim, you must condemn. So the Muslims start demolishing lots of temples mercilessly, and they pluck away jewels and they take it back as war booty to Arabia. So in the year 1100ish, in the 12th century, 13th century, you see invasions of Muhammad Ghori, and Muhammad Ghori takes over power. And sorry, why I'm saying Muhammad Ghori? You see invasions threatening Prithviraj Chauhan, and Prithviraj Chauhan, unfortunately, first in the first battle he literally defeats his enemy,
Mhm.
Ghori, and in the second battle he loses. So he's taken away to Afghanistan, executed there, and thus begins the age of the Delhi Sultanate, Muslim rule over Delhi.
Yeah.
And it takes roughly 400 years to wipe off that Muslim rule over Delhi, by the way.
Who,
So
who does that? Who does that?
the Marathas do, and
The
the Marathas
Marathas.
do it in a very nice way. So
Right, come on. Like the Marathas do, and then, oh yeah, okay. Like the Marathas do, and then the British come in swiftly after, but they do. Like it's a achievement that they have. Like,
the Delhi king has to write letters requesting salaries to the Maratha soldiers.
yeah.
So they do it in that way. Like they keep it.
Yeah.
They're so badmash, the Marathas. They literally place the Delhi king. They call him. There's literal. You know Bajirao, right? So Bajirao is called the servant of the Mughal court, the greatest servant of the Mughal court. And who will decide who will be the Mughal king? Bajirao. So what kind of a servant he is? He's that.
But
So
but then that's the thing, man. That's the problem with all these decade. Do you know the term gunpowder empires?
yeah, exactly. And the
The
problem, see the
Ottomans, Safavids, and Mughals, right? And
yeah,
so like they all decline like this, and after a while, like after like 3 to 4
yeah,
generations
basically
of,
the Mughals were
they're
puppets of
gone.
the
Like they
the
they're
Mughals
just
were puppets.
Yeah,
Puppets,
they're just
basically
the
puppets.
ornament, right? It's like technically the Marathas are subject to the Mughals, but look at the map, right? Look at the
Yeah,
map.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
let's
So
be
you
honest,
have to,
right?
and
Like,
not being honest, like even the Mughal king is crying, saying, "My women are not receiving salaries. They don't have jewels to wear. Please give me some salary, sir.
yeah,
I am a servant." So what kind of a Mughal king, right? He's a king in namesake, right?
yeah.
And Farmans are
It's just the ceremonial role of the Emperor of
exactly
India, right?
like
Like it's just
it's
yeah,
exactly like Emperor of England, right? Just
yeah.
there.
It's like he just held the title Emperor, but the real power was in Pune, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So what
and
happened?
that's the thing, like if the and I know you are a Pune person, you're a Maratha, so if the Marathas just held on to that, like a real Indian polity could have emerged there, where like you
It
know
did. It did.
yeah,
I'll show you how it did. I'll tell
but
you. I'll
then they
Yeah, because
pragmatism.
that's why I said, nah, monarchy. See, I'll make you a statement. See, if there's kings like Shivaji, right, or if there's kings like, or if there's prime ministers like Madhavrao. So
Mhm.
Madhavrao is technically the prime minister. Look at the things that happen. So the entire power comes to the prime minister, and the king is the Maratha king is also for namesake. The Mughal king is also for namesake. But the prime minister of the Maratha state is also a servant to the Mughal court. But he's deciding who the Mughal court will be, and he's also deciding who the Maratha king will be, but he's servant
It's
to the
the
both.
it's like the Japanese shogunate period. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the
the emperor is the emperor, but let's be honest, who really
who's the king?
runs things
So
here? Like
yeah.
who really
So the
runs things
so the prime minister. So
here?
basically, what happens is after the Delhi Sultanate comes, you see strong invasions of Rajputana and Deccan, and Alauddin Khilji in particular comes to the Deccan and in the Daulatabad fort. At that point in time, it's called Devgiri. So he comes to Devgiri fort. The king is very lax. The king loses.
Mhm.
The towns around Devgiri are burnt to ashes. His servant comes another time, Malik Kafur. Then he burns completely. He vanquishes everything. He names it to Daulatabad. He makes that the king of Daulatabad, the Yadav king, his dominion, and he
Mhm.
starts controlling. So those 400 years go by very strongly. Delhi Sultanate is a very mixture of it's a mixture of lots of ups and downs, and it's a proper whimsical place. So Alauddin
Mhm.
Khilji, because there is no trade relation, it's a very primitive structure. Alauddin Khilji one day decides, hey, I will reduce the prices of everything by half. And because there's only one unified currency and there's no trade with any other king, it actually worked. So he's very popular.
Mhm.
So it's a very
Yeah,
primitive structure, and
yeah,
it's
then shortages, but we don't talk about that. It's
yeah,
like
Uh,
price
yeah.
controls, price
Yeah, of
control.
course. He's a very bad person.
Yeah.
Rajendra is certainly a villain. He's invading people. He's
Mhm.
fighting for the sword. He says he's fighting for the sword of Islam. His only mission in life is to destroy kafirs, and he destroys temples. He does it proudly,
Mhm.
and
That
so you
also
see there.
speaks to, also speaks to the power of philosophy in general, because like even if you take a bad philosophy, and I would say destroying other people is a bad philosophy, right? You can see that because this person believed in the ideas of Islam, right? It it it, it moved him, and it moved armies, and it moved nations and civilizations,
True.
right? And so when people say that, okay, but how will you change the world? Just by talking about it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how we change the world, right? This is what moves the world, right? The
I'll
philosophy.
show you. I'll literally show you quotes from Hindu philosophy that
Yeah,
as
like
just let me complete these
words
two
today.
centuries now.
You know,
Just 2 centuries. I'll
I have a really good quote. So like of myself. So
yeah.
words today become legislation and armies and movies and everything tomorrow, right? Like in
True.
if you really want to fight the world, you don't do it with a sword. You don't do it with you don't do it by trying to control. You don't do it any other way than by talking about the right ideas. And if your ideas win out, you have the world, right?
True.
And so that's why it's so important. So go ahead.
So yeah, Delhi Sultanate time comes by. The is a very bad time for the peasants, and it's literally demonstrated by one of the Marxist historians. So one of the Marxist historians picks up a data of the Delhi Sultanate ruler, and I think it's Alauddin Khilji only. She picks. She shows that at the start of his reign, the revenue some X. INR, X rupees, and towards its end it's 5x or something. So she says, hey, on a colloquial look, on a casual look, on a cursory look, you'll think, hey, actually the economy is prosperous. But she says that the INR has depreciated by a factor of 10. So it becomes X by 2.
Yeah.
And he's actually exploited people to take out, and then he shows legislation that if you don't pay taxes, your head will be chopped off. If you don't do this, these things will happen, blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. Now, post the Delhi Sultanate, like there's multiple dynasties by the way in Delhi Sultanate. It starts with different dynasties. Then there's the Mamluk, then there's Sayyid, then there's Tughlaq, then there's Khilji, and then there's the last one is Lodi. So to defeat Ibrahim Lodi, um, some people say, now again history is dependent on sources. Some people say Rana Sangram Singh of Mewar calls Babar to invade him, and the ploy was, when Babar defeats Ibrahim Lodi, I will create another front against Babar and I'll defeat Babar. And this was the thing that was going to happen. So Babar defeats Ibrahim Lodi, but Babar comes with weaponized artillery. So he
Yes,
has
it was the
humongous,
gunpowder empire, right?
yeah. So he has huge artillery, and
Yeah,
in it, unfortunately, Rana Sangram Singh is defeated, and Babar gains control of
yeah. So
Delhi.
just
And
to, explain to the audience, like we both know what we're talking about. Just to explain to the audience, in history, there were three Muslim empires. There were the Ottomans of Europe, Eurasia rather. There were the Safavids of Persia, Iran, and there were the Mughals of India. So, and they were all Turks in truth, so they're coming from the same place rather in like
yes,
where it is, But these people, like the way they are moving, uh, like in Europe, especially against the Albanians, the Serbs, and the Byzantines, like they're meeting, the horse and the knight with cannons, right? And like they're meeting the Theodosian walls of Constantinople against cannons, and like the walls that Constantinople, Istanbul now, it never fell because there were no cannons. Like the walls were layered. There were like five layers, maybe more. I'm not completely uh, expert on ancient architecture, but like they were like thick walls, right? And no catapults could get rid of them, and so it was considered impregnable. But in front of a big enough cannon, it's very pregnable. So,
true,
and
true.
that's where Europe falls, and then same with the Iranians, and same with the Indians, right? Like
So the Indians,
one,
and I'll show you one thing, that the difference between the Indians is, the Indians didn't stop, and the reason for that is, north of Narmada, these things
Mhm.
are happening. Delhi Sultanate, after Delhi Sultanate passed away, again, because India as a country, if it looks small on a map, it's actually a big country.
Yeah,
So south of the Narmada, or the region called Deccan, because
yeah,
Deccan is actually a derivative of Dakshin. Dakshin means
yeah,
south.
yeah.
Yeah. So Deccan, uh, lots of changes are happening. So after
The
the Yadavas
central
are,
plateau, right?
yeah. After
Mhm.
the Yadavas are deposed, since Delhi Sultanate took over, lots of small kings have propped up. There's Pallavas, there's lots of things. There's Rashtrakut, and there's things that are, sorry, these are all before Yadavas.
Could they
But after,
counter? Could they counter the Mughal cannon though?
no, no, of course not.
It's
So,
over, right? Like it's over. Like the moment you're on horseback and you see a
but
cannon
no, no,
rolling in,
difference
it's
is,
over. It's
see,
over.
there's a saying that, so when Napoleon went into Russia,
Mhm.
Napoleon was defeated very badly. So
Yeah,
when
because of the distance.
one of nine, one of Napoleon's councilmen was asked, "What? Who defeated you?" He didn't ask what defeated
Remington.
you. He asked, what defeated you? So the councilman, who was used to saying General so and so, so he said General Winter and General Famine. So, uh, for the same reason, what the Dakhanis had, and always will continue to have, is
Mhm.
something called General Sahyadri, or the General Mountains, or the General
Yeah,
Plateau.
yeah,
So, what will cannons do over what, the 3,000 feet of mountain wall?
nothing.
So, if they are very good, if they are very modern, they will do some damage. But
Yeah,
you understand what happened.
yeah. No, not
So,
not in like the late medieval canon, right? Like
yeah. So
that
south of the
that's another
Narmada,
problem. Like these things were big, or giant horse-drawn things. So you
Big,
can't
big
carry
carriage
that in
contract.
the mountains.
They were
It's
very
almost
difficult. And in Baba's time, it was a small, like, they weren't even cannons. You, if you look at them, they'd
oh,
be
the
counter
little
guns.
things, right?
Guns, yeah,
Yeah.
basically guns.
I
So
think by the time of who Shah Jahan, they got the big
yeah,
ones.
yeah, big, big, pretty big. True. So in the time after around the time of Babar, the south of the Narmada is actually flourishing.
Hmm.
Why? Because there is a force called the Vijayanagar Empire,
Hmm.
and not many people know this, but Krishna Dev Rai, the great
The
famous,
sea driven ones, right?
yeah, yeah. So Krishna Dev Rai was actually a contemporary of Rana Sangram Singh. So that's why people say if Rana Sangram Singh and Krishna Dev Rai had actually corresponded during that time, uh, perhaps Muslim rule or Mughal rule would have never come to India. And but unfortunately for history,
That's the problem. Like, if you're in the mountains or you're on the plateau, sure, you could hold out against it. But like, unless and until you
no, no.
develop
It's
planning of your
also
own,
the Vijayanagar had a better army. It had much better organization. It had
did they have
uh,
the thing? Did they have gunpowder? Like
they did.
that's the big deciding factor.
See, once you loot gunpowder, what is the use of the cannon, right? You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
strategy can defeat any empire. I'll show you how
No,
strategy has defeated.
I agree. I agree. I agree. But you can see that, the point I'm saying, like, all else being equal, and you know
And yeah, yeah, it wasn't tech. And also the Vijayanagar also had great technology. It had a navy,
Mhm.
so it
Their
had lots of
technology and
things.
maybe it's very hard to conquer them, because see, they're behind the ghats and their naval empire, and like, you're not going to drag your entire cannon over a mountain it's not feasible, right? And even
So
on the ground,
supply chain tactics, and then
yeah,
there's economy. We'll come to Aurangzeb actually tried all these things. I will come to that. We'll come
but
to this thing. But I
my
have to just
only
talk
issue
about
is,
the
like,
Vijayanagar Empire.
yeah, see, like, the south of India is far more defensible territory. But if you look at the north, it's literally like Punjab, from
No, no,
Punjab to
it's
Bengal.
plains. Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
like
of course.
it's like
It's
a
a very flat
runway
territory.
for armies. It's like, you
True, true.
carry your cavalry, infantry, artillery, and like you
And
reach all the way
that's
to the delta,
that's the
right?
cause of the Maratha defeat at Panipat also. We'll come to that. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
So Vijayanagar Empire is actually technologically, culturally, it's so advanced. Anytime, do take your girlfriend to Hampi. It's the best place.
Mhm.
It's according to me, it's very romantic. It's very religious, but it's pretty romantic, and it's pretty individual, fulfilling. Like you'll just
Don't worry.
stand
I,
and you'll
I
think,
I can fool the best of Hindus into thinking I'm a Hindu. So don't worry about
yeah, no, no. As I say, I am still a Hindu. I will always be a Hindu.
that.
So, like Rand also said, right? She's a Jewish because, like,
Oh,
culturally. So
in
I'm
that
a,
sense,
yeah, yeah,
culturally, sure, 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 sure. Like, yeah,
and
you grew up in that, you are that in a way, but like, I don't hold to the philosophy. Mm.
yeah, yeah. So that being said, after Vijayanagar Empire is, you know, enjoying a lot. It's trying to build lots of stuff. But post Krishnadevaraya's fall, there's lots of powers that start emerging. So there's the Gajpati Empire, like Gajpati Empire still existing during Krishnadev Rai's time, but after Krishnadev Rai, soon in 20 to 30 years, a string of kings come by. But in the Battle of Talikota, all enemies of the Vijayanagar Empire unite. Basically, the Bahmanis, lots of other small kingdoms, splinter kingdoms unite, and they defeat the Vijayanagar Empire. And the reason why this event in the year 1565, Battle of Talikota, is important is it splits Vijayanagar Empire and creates these small factions through which lots of stuff is going to emerge now. In the post the year 1565, lots of things are happening in the north too. What are things happening in the north? In the north, in Rajputana, you see in Mewar, you see a guy called Pratap Singh, Maharana Pratap Singh emerging. So he's giving a lot of struggles to Mughals. Now, why I say these Mughals are a very different breed. Mughals actually changed the social fabric of India. What
Mhm.
they did was, as I said, as long as you take 10 to 50% of my income as tax and don't and leave me the hell alone, I don't care what you are. And this has been the general attitude of Hindus.
They didn't take all the way up to 50.
Yeah, yeah, depending on war
Oh,
season. It also depend on war, debt, stuff like that.
okay, all right.
So it was very. It was also income based, like
Okay.
progressive taxes and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened was these Mughals were so zealous that
Mhm.
they started demolishing temples. They started changing lots of stuff. They started
That
taking away property, and that did not sit well with the local populace.
Mhm.
So You see
Yeah.
this change happening in Babur, Humayun. Akbar
Mhm.
starts gaining popularity because he starts rolling back a lot of these changes that was done to the social fabric.
I asked
He start,
about that because what the hell was he doing? Because from what I see, Akbar is, and of course, this is the popular narrative around him, and a lot of, more uh, pro-Hindutva people have said that no, 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 you're straight up lying about him. But the popular narrative around him is that he was this philosopher king kind of guy.
I don't think he was a philosopher king as such, but
Mhm.
he had a lot of changes, and he was certainly better than, like, in the Mughal. He was certainly one of the better kings.
Yeah,
And post Haldi Ghati, see, till Haldi Ghati, Akbar is also very zealous. Akbar also demolishes a lot of towns around Haldi Ghati. So as I
yeah,
said, around 1565, post that time till 1576, in the Battle of Haldi Ghati, you see Maharana Pratap Singh unfortunately being defeated because he had 22,000 force fighting against 80,000 force. Some of the Rajputana had joined Akbar, so he was defeated, but he continues guerrilla fighting around the jungles of Mewar and Chittorgarh. But in 1576, you see after Haldi Ghati, Akbar destroying a lot of towns, literally,
yeah.
wiping them off clean,
Towards the tactics.
leveling them. So he's also zealous, but he goes a lot of transformation too. And
Yeah,
towards the end of his life, he abandons Islam in its totality.
yeah.
And
He's not even a Muslim properly, is he?
yeah, no, he abandons Islam in its totality. He forms a new religion called Deen Ilahi. And
What happened to that? I don't hear about that anymore. Like,
yeah,
does
because
it exist?
it was basically it treated like it was Akbar's fad. He had that, yeah, it was Akbar's fad. No one
Like,
can, like,
how the hell? Like, that's what I'm thinking. How the hell did the Islamic clergy just let that fly in his court?
it did not, right. It did not. But who will oppose Akbar? Like,
Yeah,
he's the greatest. He's the
that's
most
another
powerful
thing.
person in India.
Yeah, it's like I was also thinking, well, how did the rest of the Muslim powers act? Well, Persia was on
Again,
its
right?
own
You,
for
you
that.
you won't see Akbar being called the great. You'll all see Aurangzeb, and the reason is I'll give you in front. So
Mhm.
after Akbar dies, Akbar also tries making his forays into Deccan. He tries defeating after Vijayanagar dies, lots of splinter groups form. Soon they form these splinter groups called
Mhm.
called the Nizam Shahi dynasty, one's
Mhm.
called the Adil Shahi dynasty, and one's called the Qutub Shahi dynasty. These are three Shahi dynasties that are formed. So the Nizam Shahi dynasty at Ahmednagar, Akbar tries invading them, tries to capture them, but he tries making forays into Deccan, but they aren't really fully successful. After Akbar's death in Mewar, Amar Singh is still trying to fight the Mughal king, but his treasury is emptied up, completely emptied up. He doesn't know what to do, and he unfortunately has to take a nominal supremacy, accept the nominal supremacy of the Mughal king. He's allowed to continue as in, and then he just accepts it. He's like, okay, sure. And then Jahangir declares victory. Post 1614, all these things happening in 1614. Post that, Shah Jahan gains power. And
Yeah.
Shah Jahan is also a very zealous king.
So,
So,
what does Jahangir do? Like, I never hear about. Like, it's like
yeah, because
oh,
Jahangir's reign wasn't a very famous reign. So
yeah, it's
Jahangir
like
did not,
Akbar did a lot of great things. Then there was Jahangir, and then there was Shah Jahan. Like Jahangir
yeah.
is like skipped over. Like, nothing to worry about this guy.
Yeah, because Jahangir had no new campaigns no, not very exciting campaigns to start. You'll hear
Did
a
he
lot about Shah
continue with
Jahan. You'll
the
hear a lot about Aurangzeb.
Yeah, did he continue? Like, did the Mughal? Why didn't the Mughal line continue with their own religion, right? Like the Akbarite variety.
See, now that's the question that's been done, that Mughal, there's a claim that Mughals weren't really Muslim, because the claim rests on an argument saying Mughals did something called Sulh Kul, which was a policy of religious tolerance. Now, very recent works have started to demolish that argument, that say, hey, the Mughals adopted religious coexistence, not because of ideology, but because of practicality. Like, you
Mhm.
will see lots of Rajputs and Hindu soldiers in the Mughal Empire.
Yeah,
This
but
does not.
Akbar was not Muslim, right? Like Akbar
Yeah,
himself.
Akbar certain. Akbar is an exception to Mughal rule itself.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because,
But I'm asking, Jahangir is his son and heir, right? So wouldn't he be training him in this? And like,
yeah, but he
that's
could
the
not,
bigger
right? He could not. Jahangir, there's one Akbar and his small group of followers in religion, that is.
okay.
And there's a huge swath of Islamic clergy, Al Biruni, even every.
Oh,
No, I
okay.
mean, Al Biruni is pretty early, but
He
it's
he
these
just
big.
failed. He just failed.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
easy explanation.
exactly.
Okay.
In religious terms, he failed. And so Jahangir, but Jahangir is not as zealous as his son, though. So
And then
after
there's still
Jahangir,
Akbarian influence on.
yeah. So
Yeah.
after Jahangir, Shah Jahan comes to power, and Shah Jahan is pretty zealous. So Shah Jahan starts invading into the Deccan, and Shah Jahan starts sending his son. So his son's
Why?
pretty successful.
Why the hell? Like, just leave it alone, guys.
The
It's not.
policies, the religious policy of these zealous people is every person must be a follower of God. and by
Mhm.
God is like the
Yeah,
Islamic God.
the right, the
So
capital R right God, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
like.
So they must add our methods and all, and anyone who doesn't does not deserve to live, and that literally was their policy.
Mhm.
So he starts sending armies, and of course there's revenue of the Deccan. Deccan is a pretty fertile land, so he starts sending armies under Aurangzeb. So Aurangzeb basically is fighting with full force, and he's fighting Nizam Shahi, Adil Shahi, and Qutub Shahi forces. So
Mhm.
Adil Shahi forces accept suzerainty, supremacy of Mughals. Qutub Shahi also does, but Nizam Shahi is fighting. What? And there's a guy called Shahaji. So Shahaji is is the member of the Bhosle dynasty. So Shahaji Bhosle is fighting for is switching alliances because his aim is to let go of this tyrant rule that has come on my head and establish my own Hindu kingdom. It is
Mhm.
in his head. But because he's alone, he's not fully successful. And the Nizam Shahi dynasty, he literally makes the Nizam Shahi dynasty his puppet. But the Nizam Shahi dynasty comes, the Mughals defeat the Nizam Shahi dynasty conclusively. He accepts, because the Adil Shahi dynasty is also a vassal of the Mughals. So he accepts a job there. He starts working for the Adil Shahis. And the Nizam Shahi dynasty is broken into two. North part is taken by Adil Shah and sorry, Qutub Shah, and south part. Sorry, yeah, north part is taken by Adil Shah, south part by Qutub Shah. If I'm not wrong, I have to check, but half of is divided. And now that these Adil Shah dynasty and Qutub Shah dynasty are more or less the two major players that remain in the Deccan. In the year 1630, it is said that Vishnu and Shiva themselves took birth to Shahaji called Shivaji. So Shivaji is born in the year 1630, and early on, it is said in his biography that he wasn't a big fan of Muslims. He disliked them, and after 1630, in the year 1650s, he starts taking. When he's 1617, he starts taking control of Adil Shah forts. His father, as I said, is now a servant of the Adil Shah, but he has reached a very nice place. But around 1650, he starts taking actual direct control of Adil Shahi forts, and he's basically treated as a rebel because he's
Mhm.
taking. So he's sent armies are sent on to him to defeat him, but he is very politically smart. He defeats them.
Mhm.
1650, 1652 onwards, there's literally reports of him arresting his actual mama, like his maternal uncle, because he's exploiting peasants. So he is treated as a peasant king and a
Mhm.
Hindu king. So 16 in the year post 1650, 1654 onwards, Shahaji is arrested.
Yeah.
Post in the year, yeah, I'm not sure what year, but yeah, around 1650 ish, Shahaji Maharaj is arrested. I'll ping the year to you. So he's arrested because he starts gaining power again. The modus operandi, since I said Vijayanagar Empire is defeated, it doesn't mean it's completely wiped off. The
Mhm.
Vijayanagar Empire is still reduced to one tenth of its size,
Mhm.
right?
And
So it's still
didn't they have
existent.
like overseas colonies as well in Indonesia and places?
That's the Chola Empire.
Oh, I'm
That's pretty.
confusing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's pretty early. That's pretty early.
Yeah.
So the Vijayanagar Empire is still there, and the existing Vijayanagar kings start contacting Shahaji a lot. So Shahaji is now getting power with Vijayanagar. So the Adil Shah king fears that now if he unites with Vijayanagar, these people will bring a Hindu empire forth. So he arrests him preemptively, and he keeps him in jail. So Shivaji is so smart. Shivaji writes a letter to the Mughal court saying, "I am your servant, sir." And for to the observer, it may appear he is accepting Mughal superiority. What he does is, "I am a servant, sir. As an ambassador, I choose my father. He's in the Adil Shah prison. So please make him your ambassador." So the Mughals always want to win over Deccan anyhow. So the Mughals think, hey, this kid is smart, this kid is in Deccan, and Shahaji, everyone knows Shahaji because, as I said, he's fighting a lot. He's basically made a puppet state. So if we make Shahaji our ambassador, well, that will be a big thing.
Yeah. It's over.
So yeah, it's over. So the
Yeah.
Mughals immediately make him his ambassador, and Adil Shah has to release Shahaji. So this is a big thing that happened. So basically, Shahaji is now a Mughal representative in a foreign court, and he has a lot of weight. And Shivaji got his father released. So these are developments that are happening in the year 1650s. What happens? What is the biggest thing that, according to me, that happens is in the year 1647, right before all this happens, is Shivaji signs a letter Shivaji gives a punishment to the village headman for molesting a girl. Some people say molesting, some people say rape, some people say adultery, but basically he codified women's rights. And
Mhm.
that's these are some watershed events that are happening.
Mhm.
So in the post 1650s, in the year 1659, Adil Shah sends one of his strongest generals onto Shivaji with a force of 50,000. Now,
Mhm.
given the size, 50,000 force, Shivaji, if he collected all his army at once, Shivaji would have raised barely 10 to 15,000 people. A
Yeah.
force of 50,000 that's sent on Shivaji. What
Not
Shivaji does is,
impossible, but tactically highly improbable, right? So, like people have won with those numbers in history, but it doesn't look good,
true,
you know.
true, true, true.
Mhm. So, for example, the British in North Africa. I remember this is what the battle with the Italians. So the Italians had roughly 200,000 men, and the British had 30,000. But the
Well
British,
organized, well
yeah,
organized strategy.
they were well organized, and they were mechanized. So they were more mobile. So they just ran circles around the Italian infantry and like picked them aside, and like they won that battle. So like it's possible to win against those odds, but 9 times out of 10 you're losing.
So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, basically, so Shivaji does exactly this. Shivaji takes advantage of his geography. There's a region called Jauli, pretty near to Pune. What he does is he makes his base there. He shifts there, and you must realize what kind of general Adil Shah sent on him. The general's name was Afzal Khan, Khan Afzal Khan, and that his literal stamp in Persian meant, if you ask the heavens, if you ask the seventh heaven, who's the greatest person on planet Earth, you will hear the voice of Afzal. So that was his Persian. He used to think very highly of himself. His harem had roughly 100 women, if I'm not wrong, and he had 60 women. Yeah, 60 women. And there's literally a place in Bijapur in Karnataka where the graves of all of his wives are there. So 60 women, and he had 100 children. So he was a very lavish, very big hotshot person. And who had sent him? So as I said, Shivaji's father Shahaji was arrested.
Mhm.
The guy who put him in chains was Afzal Khan. Shivaji had an elder brother who was a fort keeper of Bangalore, modern day Bangalore, at Bangalore and Kandarpi.
Uh,
So,
did did he did he work in tech relations?
no, no, no. But yeah, he actually worked in artillery though, so the tech relations of this time. So he was actually executed by Afzal Khan. Like he was responsible for Afzal Khan was responsible for Shivaji's elder brother death. And so basically, he had a family enmity with Shivaji's family. And
Mhm.
Shivaji decides, Emperor Shivaji. So, wow, I just like to add this disclaimer. For the course of this interview, I wouldn't use grand titles. I use the name of the king because we are in an academic discussion. So, I can't give reverence to any particular character of history. I can only observe historical techniques that are happening. So,
Mhm.
okay, that being said, Shivaji has a family enmity. So,
Mhm.
someone, and in the year 1659, early on, Shivaji's first wife dies, and pretty soon after childbirth. So the heir to the throne is barely 2.5 years. The wife is gone. The person who put your father in chains, the guy who is responsible for your elder brother's killing, is on to you with a force of 40,000. Who was sworn that he'll carry off your head as war booty to the Adil Shah. So these
Is
are
there
the
a,
scenarios.
there's
Yeah.
no way. There's no way with that setup he doesn't win, bro.
Yeah. So Adil Shah, so Shivaji decides now, Shivaji, there's a literal sentence in Marathi that he says that I'll die killing this monster, but I won't form a truce with him. I don't care if he brings 40,000 or a lakh people.
Mhm.
So what he does is, Shivaji very smartly decides geographical advantage. Javli is a very dense forest, very, very, very dense forest. I'll say the wettest place on earth recently, by the way. It crossed Cherrapunji.
I can
So
see it. I can
yeah,
see
so
what's gonna happen.
what he decides is, I'll tell Khan, I'll give him a reputation of that, hey, I am scared. I'm scared. You need to come to meet me. So he brings him in his territorial ranges. He cuts off supply line. He surrounds enemy movements. He causes complete rout of his enemy forces, and he kills Khan. And if I were to give a physical advantage, so Shivaji is like 5 feet one, 5 feet two, barely weighs 50, 60 kilograms. Afzal Khan is 6 feet 3 inches, weighs something like 110, kilograms.
Yeah,
So
it's like
humongous physical advantage.
yeah, yeah.
And But still, Shivaji very smartly manages to pull out the intestines of Afzal Khan, kill him,
David
and
versus Goliath.
yeah. And then after that, Shivaji in 18 days, he's sitting in Pune. He's sitting slightly south of Satara.
Mhm.
From there, roughly 300 kilograms, 300 kilometers of coast, 300 kilometers of roughly 150 kilometers of territory, and all forts in between. He captures in 18 days with lightning speed. These are the events that are happening in 1659 onwards. 1661, there's a big siege in the south. Shivaji escapes it. Shivaji comes to the north. Then there's an entire Mughal forces that are coming in. Shivaji has to form a truce. Shivaji has to go to Agra. Shivaji comes back. I'm skipping a bit because
Mhm.
within the Maratha Empire, if I were to talk on Shivaji, I have to take an entire session or write an entire book
Yeah.
because Shivaji's character is humongous.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
in
I'll just slightly pause you for like, like I am a person interested in military history and tactics, right? So, uh, like this reminds me, like the scene that you have described, it's something which is so mythified. It happened in, if you remember the betrayal of Germanicus, the Teutoburg forest, right? In which they led the Roman legions into Germania, uh, into the forests of northern Saxony, and then they surrounded and like the German tribes wiped entire legions out, the entire Roman military out, right? And so that's why the Germans were never conquered by the Romans.
true.
And even if you go in fiction, right? If you have you read the uh, Game of Thrones series?
No, I'm aware though. I'm aware of different factions fighting it.
Yeah, so in the Game of Thrones series, what was the battle? I think it was I don't remember exactly what it was called, but the it's in the beginning. Rob Stark, the young wolf guy, he actually touts the who was the guy? Jamie Lannister. He
Right.
touts him into the forest, and the Riverland Stark cavalry. They rout him and they do this. So like this is something which is like this exact tactic of taking into the forest and surrounding and like taking that geographical advantage. This is something very much present in universal military history and
True, true,
even
true.
mythology, right? And so like
And
it's
thank you for
something very
reminding of mythology. So the first contemporary biography of Shivaji, when it's written, is written in Sanskrit, like based on the precedent. So it states that,
let me guess, they worship him.
yeah, yeah, of course,
Yeah, yeah, they
he's
worship everything, bro. Like there is not a thing
true,
we
true,
don't worship.
true. Thing
Like,
person. So
mhm,
Shivaji is basically equated with Shiva, and the reason they say is so when Shivaji tears off the intestine of Afzal Khan, they literally Shiva ha Krupanika Grena Kuka Tamaspusham, which basically means Shiva inserts his Shiva, like look at it, Shiva Ji as well as Shiva inserts his sword into the barbarian stomach and tore off the intestines.
mhm.
So that's the equation that's given.
Yeah, there's the mythologization, right? Like it's a fascinating thing, right? Because to execute such a maneuver, you have to be a tactical genius. Like you have to be brilliant, right?
So yeah, post Afzal Khan, lots of interesting developments happen. And as I said, in the year 1661, there's a big siege where Shivaji is literally his life is threatened. Some people rescue him of it, and there's a little standoff there. We'll have a separate session on Shivaji if we need it. But
Mhm,
in 1661 ish, then Shivaji defeats basically Aurangzeb's uncle, maternal uncle.
mhm,
And after that, he starts consolidating power once again, but
mhm.
in that decade, lots of
I'd
people are
also
sent.
I'd also ask the technological situation. I believe at this point the Mughals have been around enough so that the Indians can learn and improvise
True, true.
the tactical and the
In
technological
the
edge.
in 1654, Shivaji captures the western coast, parts of the western coast,
Mhm.
and Shivaji starts building a navy of his own,
Yeah.
a very modern navy, and he builds it with the help of the Portuguese.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's state of the art. So it's state of the art.
So
So
I would
he's
say
very
then at that point the Indians have technological parity with the Mughals. So
yeah, yeah.
the
They start
gunpowder
getting. I
advantage, the
wouldn't say
gunpowder
power
age
parity
advantage
itself,
is gone.
but they start. Yeah, it starts very easily. Now I'll show you what kind of the kind of artillery the Marathas had in the future. The British are jealous of it.
Mhm.
So it's the navy, especially we had state of the art navy. So post 1650 50s onwards, 1660s may the Mughals send lots of hordes onto Shivaji. But Shivaji, what he does is he calls a truce. He goes to Agra. He's trapped there. He escapes sitting in fruit baskets. He comes back to the Deccan. He starts taking back Mughal to taking back the forts surrendered in the Mughal treaty. And in the year 1674, as I said, after 400 years of since the Ghoris invasion, there is finally a big Rajabhishek that's happening after defeating a major Mughal Muslim
So
empire. And
Rajabhishek
Shiva
would be crowning, right? Just
coronation, yeah. Shivaji is so in the year 1674, Shivaji is finally crowned king.
Mhm,
Post 1674, he launches a southern invasion and takes his empire, takes his kingdom right till Vellore in Tamil Nadu.
mhm.
So it's roughly 400
That's
kilometers.
way
Very
south. That's
yeah,
way south.
way
Yeah.
south, way south.
Mhm,
So he and he makes the Adil Shah. The greatest thing that happened is the empire that it was the kingdom that was responsible for his father's imprisonment, for his elder brother's death. He makes that very kingdom the puppet of his whim. So it's basically a puppet state. He still mints coin in Adil Shah's name, but that's the Hindu rule. He will make a Muslim king sit here. I don't care, but as long as he doesn't trample temples, as long as he lets Hindu rule stay, I have no problem with Muslims.
mhm.
Let them be as they are.
Yeah.
So and that's his state policy
Namely,
too. As long
uh, you could see that there's a, like a peaceful collaboration, peaceful coexistence is only possible under a non-aggressive frame of work, right? So that goes
exactly,
to the
exactly.
libertarian
And
point, you know.
yeah, given the context in India, it was a Hindu state. So in Muslims and Hindus were significantly much more prosperous than Hindus in Muslim states.
Mhm.
So this was the scenario, and Adil Shah is a puppet. But
I
towards
would
the
say
end,
though, the Keralites might be an exception to the rule, right? Because the Kerala Muslims, they usually came through trade, and so they
no,
might.
but still, I haven't seen one instance where Muslims occupied like the Kerala political power. It was always Hindus that occupied. Political power was Hindus.
Mhm. Yeah, but even like Kerala Hindus are also like a different breed, right?
They're
Kerala,
they're pretty
everyone there is like,
cosmopolitan. They're
yeah,
pretty cosmopolitan. Yeah.
yeah, they're so like, it's really a bad thing that they're commies. Like, not there. Everybody there is a commie, but like the commie party rules, right? And so it's very poor, like compared to what they could have been. But Kerala, the spirit of the people in Kerala is something, not their politics, not their communism, not their, let's say, nominal
It's
communism. They're not.
just live. See, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you one thing very honestly. That they are Hindus in the end. Like they go to temples, they do all their
Yeah, for
ritualistic
sure.
things. But
Mhm.
that's the reason, right? This is the Hindu way of thinking. Cosmopolitanism, tolerance, religious coexistence. I do you, I do I, you do you. This thinking is a very Hindu thinking, and it's a very Indian way of thinking. And that's a good, like, of course, that's good. You wouldn't call it secular. That people fall into its trap of calling it secular. It's tolerant.
Yeah,
It's
but
cosmopolitan.
see, secular, that's another thing, right? The way you are defining Hinduism, like not Hinduism, Hindutva, you're defining it in a secular manner. So I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
say Hindu
Hindutva is
philosophy,
secular.
right?
Hinduism is tolerant. Ism
Yes,
is Ism is God. Itva is political identity.
yes. And so that would be secular. And so the term secular just means neutral on the idea of God, right? And so
Right.
by that, Hindu philosophy would be secular. However, Hinduism, the religion, would not.
True.
So that's what I would say. And of course,
True.
the Indian conception of secular is basically put the Hindus down. So
Yeah, it's Fabian socialist. So it's just
it's not
majority
secular.
bad. And it's not secular. It's put Hindus bad and yeah. So
Yeah.
that being said, in towards the latter stages of life, Shivaji is so smart. Shivaji literally makes a prediction.
Mhm.
He says that my son Sambhaji will be betrayed, and that's exactly what happens. My son
Godfather
Sambhaji
moment.
my son Sambhaji will be betrayed. I
Mhm.
will come back with the same name, and I will take the flag until Delhi.
Mhm.
And Shivaji dies in 1680, and in 1680, Sambhaji is crowned after a civil war, and after that, his entire Mughal force descends on Sambhaji, a force of
What's the
7
number?
lakh.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
force
Oh my. That's a
of
700,000.
yeah,
Seven hundred
700,000.
thousand. Holy
700,000
shit.
descendants, 700,000, like thousands of elephants, like again hundreds and thousands of horses, state of the art artillery,
And
Uzbekis,
also, this is the,
Tajikistanis,
yeah, this is the, Turkic cavalry. So like
Turkic cavalry,
yeah,
and
and like,
even Rajput legion. So
yeah,
all the great martial races of South Asia and Asia
yeah.
basically come together to
And
fight.
by the way, the Turkic people, so like the Turani Turks, right? The Central Asians, uh, they have figured out nothing but one thing, which is how to breed horses, right?
True. So that like they can drink the blood, right? So they don't
Yeah.
starve off.
Yep.
True.
And so,
So
if you're
I just
facing,
complete this. Look at the now post 1680 to 1707. A lot of interesting things are going to happen, and post 1707 to 1907. There's again lots of interest. So I'll complete this 1707 wala portion,
mhm,
uh, because we have a lots of material to talk about.
yeah,
So 1689, 1680 onwards, somebody is basically fighting the entire Mughal juggernaut. At the
mhm,
same time, he also has to fight religious persecution in Goa because the Portuguese have gone mad. The Portuguese are much more zealous than the Mughals, so you can imagine how zealous they are. They
mhm,
say anyone who's a Gentile, we will insert a rod from the rectum and take it out from the mouth. So that these are little punishments that are given. People are boiled alive. People are Inquisition is horrible. Somebody enters Goa. Somebody captures until Bardesh. So it's like what 10, 15, 20 kilometers from old Goa. But he still, because the Mughals are so mad, he has to come back. He has to fight the Mughals non-stop. And in the year 1689, 9 years, roughly these are, I am cutting short, but in the year 1689, he's betrayed. And he's funny enough, Aurangzeb's son is actually on Sambhaji's side. He says, let's form an alliance together, let's take the Rajputs together and let's invade Aurangzeb. But Sambhaji is not able to form an alliance with the Rajputs and invade Aurangzeb. Multiple reasons, but that unfortunately does not come to transpire. And when Aurangzeb comes, Sambhaji is betrayed and Sambhaji is executed brutally, on which a movie recently came. Very brutally, bowels dismembered, hands chopped off, skin pulled out, nails pulled out, eyes gouged out, tongue chopped off, and then finally, limbs by limb, he's hacked and finally beheaded after roughly 23 days of torture, I think. And in the year 1689, this actually proves the spark for the Maratha state. So Sambhaji's younger brother Rajaram is made king. He's he starts unifying these elements. But in the year 1689, because he's Aurangzeb, he's the greatest ruler of the Mughals. Why? Because he cuts off, he reinstates jizya. He becomes a hard, zealous Muslim. He reinstates jizya, he reinstates the pilgrimage tax. That if you go for a pilgrimage, you'll have to pay. He becomes
jizya is
super
the, religious tax, right?
religious
That if
tax,
you're
yeah,
not a
that
Muslim,
non-Muslims
you
have
have
to
to pay
pay. Yeah,
taxes. Yeah.
yeah. So Aurangzeb goes mad. He becomes superly exploitative. He takes he is beheaded people for not paying taxes, and
He invades Tibet too for some goddamn reason.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
He's invaded lots of places.
mhm.
He's invaded Kabul, Kandahar. As a conqueror, he's great. As a great, great as in like he's unmatched.
Yeah.
So
So a military tactician, a good
military,
military practitioner and good strategist.
basically a tyrant, an ultra like Attila, what Iran
Yeah,
would
yeah,
call.
yeah, yeah.
So
So this
now
would
that
be your,
he's not a
Hitler.
nation builder. He's a conqueror. You give him
Yeah,
a soldier, you give him force, he'll win will win a war
yeah.
for you.
This is your Hitler basically, like
Yeah,
fanatic.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. He's killed off his brother to gain power. He's imprisoned his father Shah Jahan so that he can gain power. So he's basic power, very power hungry, and for the sake of Islam, he's doing everything. So
Mhm.
in the year 60 after this, so Raigad, the capital of the Marathas, is called the place where not even eagles can rest properly because it's that high. But he raises a siege. He starts daylight, he bombarding the hell out of it. So Sambhaji's widow is so smart. She advises Rajaram to slip off and go to the south and continue the war from there. And because in case something happens to us, you will avenge us. We know, but the king, the rightful heir of the place, shouldn't die. So in the year 1618, Rajaram slips off to the south. He unifies multiple Hindu kings on the way, and from the year 1618 into 1707, the Marathas try and do everything to prevent Mughals from gaining power. So the Marathas invade Madhya Pradesh. Marathas invade lands north of the Deccan. The Marathas uh, increase their naval strength. And in the year 1707, the Mughal Empire has pretty much inflicted serious military damage and serious financial damage. Because why? A war is not a poor man's business. So the war in Deccan has chewed a lot of Mughal strength. And finally, in the year 1707, Aurangzeb dies while trying to win over these Mughals, these Marathas. So the Marathas actually are saved. From the year 1707, Aurangzeb had, when Raigad fell, Aurangzeb took away Sambhaji's widow and Sambhaji's infant son, like not really infant, toddler son. So now that he took them away, uh, he releases Sambhaji's son in 1707. So again, there's a civil war between Raja Ram's widow and Sambhaji's son, because like two different lines, who will be the king now. So Sambhaji's son, who was the rightful owner, because he was the son of the elder brother. So he wins and he becomes the king. But because he's of pure heart, he lets his uncle's side also remain in place. So two separate thrones are established. Two separate Maratha thrones are established. One's at Satara and one's at Kolhapur. So at Satara, Shahu becomes the Sambhaji's son. Shahu. Now this is the main character now. Shahu became gains power. So from the year 13 onwards, Shahu gives the prime ministership to Balaji Vishwanath Bhatt, whose family remained the prime minister till the end. 1713, Balaji Vishwanath gains the robes of the Peshwa, and
Mhm.
17 or 20 he passes away. He makes a lot of revolutionary changes, which are basically he gains tax rights to the Deccan. He from the Mughal court, basically saying that, hey, we are the rulers of the Deccan now, and
Mhm.
we are nominally subservient to you just in names. So when 1720 Bajirao Balaji Vishwanath dies, his son Bajirao is also given prime ministership robes, and he starts pouring into the north. And he defeats Rajputana. He defeats Mewar, Udaipur, Jodhpur, Jaipur, and he defeats Malwa. He defeats, most importantly, according to me, his most important victory is Vasai. He defeats the Portuguese. He vanquishes them. He pulls away church bells, because he said, "You do Inquisition, right? I'm pulling away your church bells." Actually, it was his brother who did all this, but I'm pulling away in the name of my elder brother. I'm pulling away my church bells, your church bells. I'm taking them to temples, and I'm hanging them as war booty now. So all this is happening in the year 1739. 1740 again, Bajirao dies an untimely death. And under his son, Nana Sahib, or Balaji Bajirao the first, the Maratha Empire reaches its zenith. So the Marathas conquer Rajputana, Maratha conquers Malwa, but while conquering Rajputana, again, the Marathas don't really, you must understand what kind of decentralized governance there was there and why it came out of. Since 1689 to 1707, Raja Ram, Sambhaji's younger brother, went to the south, and at that point in time, down south near Vellore, he has to manage lands here in Maharashtra, tax collection, revenue, who allotment to who for revenue. So what he decides is he decentralizes. He delegates a lot of power to his subordinates, and he said, okay, if you're conquering this land, right, you are its rightful owner. Only 20 to 30% or whatever, some free fixed tax revenue you have to pay to me. So that's what his trusted aide, basically his amatya or his trusted aide, Ramchandra Pant Amatya, decides all this. So you must realize why this happened. So Mughals have come in full force. The king has to go down south, but the lands here, someone has to manage them, right? So he delegates authority to his subordinates.
Mhm.
So this creates a pattern where now no one is vanquishing people. The Marathas, whenever they're conquering lands, they are not vanquishing them. They are delegating authority to them, and they're asking for chauth. Chauth as in 25% of taxes. Not just chauth, then there's a 5% tax for directly that goes to the king, 25% that goes to the state, and stuff like that. So these are the scenarios that are happening. So around 1740, 1750, lots of invasions are happening. Rajputana's been destroyed. The Nizam of Hyderabad is destroyed. Lots of invasion northwards. In the year 1759, the Maratha flag finally reaches Lahore. So the Maratha flag reached right from Peshawar. It said from politically said from Peshawar to Tanjavur. So Tanjavur in the south and Peshawar in the north. So the Marathas have finally reached confederacy, and they have made Delhi their puppet, the Delhi throne. So Abdali, Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Afghans, as you said rightfully, Punjab is basically a runway for empires. So in the year 17, right from 1720s, Nadir Shah, the Afghan king, starts invading India. And towards 1750s, 59, his lieutenant, now who gained power after killing of Anand Shah, his lieutenant Ahmad Shah Abdali invades India. In the year 1761, there's a face-off, and unfortunately, the Marathas lose. But the Marathas don't give up. In the year 1761, Nana Sahib dies, the prime minister, who had, after Shahu's death, the prime minister became the supreme authority in the Maratha empire. And in the year 1761, after Nana Sahib's death, his son gains power, uh, gains the prime ministership,
Mhm.
and he is running things now. So post 1761 to 1772, his reign, and he unifies everything. He gains literally everything that was lost in Panipat. And that leads Grand Duff to write a literal quote that says, "The plains of Panipat weren't as disastrous to the Marathas than was the loss of this young lad." And that young lad was Madhura, as I said, Madhura the first. So in 1772, Madhura dies. And as I
Mhm.
said, after that, there's a lot of political turmoil. He died without an heir. So his younger brother is Peshwa, but his uncle is very politically greedy. So he kills off his younger brother, tries to be Peshwa, but the council of ministers doesn't allow it. So as you can see, from the emperor, the power went to the prime minister. Now, after the prime minister died without an heir, the uncle tried to gain power, but the council deposed him. So it's literally called Bar Bhai's conspiracy, which literally means 12 people conspired to remove this pretender and gain power. So now it has become basically, it's exactly like the East India Company. It's 12 people who are running, and 12 people from different backgrounds,
Mhm.
who someone's a lawyer, someone's a judge, the supreme judge, someone's a religious person, someone's a military person. 12 people of these kinds are running the entire state. And
Mhm.
1772, post 1772 and 79 till 1790s, lots of problems with Rajputana, and Mahaji Sindhya, he becomes the supreme authority, and he basically makes the Delhi king his puppet. And as I said, he's right. The Delhi king is writing letters asking for some salary because his wives and his harem is starving. Post 1790, the British decide that, hey, this is a chaos. The Sikhs are getting power. The Marathas don't have one unified person who's calling the
This
shots.
is something I would also like to talk about. The Sikhs, right? Uh,
Right.
would you consider them within the Hindu canon or not?
Yeah, yeah. I will
So,
personally.
okay. So because
Until the 10th Guru, I will certainly. And after that too also, Ranjit Singh was basically banned cow slaughter throughout his dominions.
Mhm.
But nowadays it's pretty different for political purposes. But yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
originally I wouldn't consider Hindu Sikhs as part of the Hindu canon.
Okay. So the Sikhs, they're like Sikhs, they're really a different thing to me. Like not really. Like I can see a reason to include them, but I can also see a reason to exclude them because
The
they
thing
were
is,
a reaction to both, right? They were a reaction to the Muslims in in the West,
they
and
were they were reaction to Hindu orthodoxy and Muslims in general. So you have to take
yeah.
both into account. They are, according to me, the reformist movement within Hinduism that emerged out of Hinduism. But whatever way you would look at it.
Yeah, and like they create really a very martial state, you know. Uh,
So did the
so
Marathas, right? So the
Mhm.
Marathas, after I just complete the Maratha part, and then we'll get into the crux of the interesting part.
Mhm.
So post 1790s, lots of turmoil. The British start gaining power. What interesting things happen is Raghunath Rao, the same uncle who deposed his nephew after Namadhar's death, asks for the British help to gain political power and become the prime minister. So the British come in the first Anglo-Maratha war. This Raghunath Rao is conclusively defeated, and the British are defeated, and the power unfortunately splinters into these different directions. So that leads to more Anglo-Maratha wars because the British do want control and they do want to get power. So the second and third Anglo-Maratha war happens, and after the third Anglo-Maratha war, the Maratha Confederacy conclusively ends, and the British take complete charge. And
Mhm.
until 1857, they keep institutions as is. Post 1857, the British political power
Yeah,
steps in,
yeah,
and they start becoming totalitarian,
yeah,
so and so.
exactly. Mhm. Yeah.
So why I covered the Maratha Empire in detail is, well, Marathas have the greatest historians according to me. So the
Mhm.
Maratha historians have a huge tradition, and what the Maratha historians have done is they let go of every worldly pleasure, and only when I have seen. case studies of people who have left gone on of daily income, like a stable income, and literally begged for food so that they could earn, say they could, collect papers relating to the Maratha state, and then they could make debt analysis, then they could make tax analysis, which one was better for individuals. So there have been such dedicated people.
Mhm.
And so post 1857, lots of movements are happening, social movements are happening, and within them I see two particular stalwarts that emerged. One's Tilak Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, whose house I took you to, and
Yeah.
the other's Gopal Ganesh Agarkar. That man lived in the same house. So originally, Gopal Ganesh Agarkar and Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak are actually on the same side. Both are social reformers. Both
Mhm.
want to reform caste. Both want to reform women's education. And both, by the way, are big fans of Herbert Spencer, and John S. Mill. So
Mhm.
both are classical liberals. Gopal Ganesh Agarkar explicitly states that dependence on the state has increased. We need People need to increase trade and entrepreneurship. Government officers are very bad, and the rule of the governed is increasing. Governed, like the governors are increasing in number than the governed. So this is the state is ever expanding. So these are limited government expanders.
Yeah.
What happens is there's a bill of consent that's floated around. So in Hinduism at that point in time, child marriage was a real thing. Again, the funny thing was, married children used to be married very young, 12, 13 years of age. Then they used to be taken to the respective homes, and post attaining maturity, they used to come and consume it.
It's still,
So
you know,
yeah,
like,
child marriage, yeah, of course, of course.
even
I'm
if
not.
you're, yeah, yeah, I know. I'm just like thinking out loud. Even if you're, let's say, waiting for maturity, like in our conception as objectivists broadly, like the concept of romantic love is important, like the choice of your partner.
True, true. You shouldn't like. It was more clan based, clan alliance, right? So that
It was
it's not a
part
good thing.
of the medieval clan alliance,
Yeah,
and
yeah. So,
of course, on
anyways,
that grounds, you got to reject. Even even if they're waiting till the age of maturity for the act of sex to happen, it's still a bad thing to force someone into such a thing. Yeah.
so this is where now things are going to get interesting, and you have to, you are going to like this a lot.
Mhm.
So after that, what happens is these both of them start newspapers. The Kesari in Marathi, which is where I took you.
Yeah.
It is the headquarters of Kesari, and Maratha in English. So the Maratha starts writing on these problems, and exactly that is they say if they're good or not. There's a literal article that states that is should how should education be provided. All
Mhm.
these are great geniuses that talk. Soon, there's a falling out because there's in the Deccan Education Society, Tirak accuses Agar. Tirak comes from a very, very financially rich background. Agarkar comes from a very poor background. So Agarkar wants some salary increase. Tirak says you're against the nation, you're campaigning against the nation and stuff. And so there's a very petty fallout. But soon, Tirak, there's a very famous bill that comes. The bill says now the government should decide the age of consent, and the age of consent should be fixed for whatever. It was 12 then,
Mhm.
and no marriage before the age of 12. So
Mhm.
Agarkar says, yeah, this is a good thing. Agarkar, the classical liberal, starts saying this is a good thing that the government is deciding, government's acting in favor. Tilak
Mhm.
says government and religion mixed together. And that too, the British colonial government and Hindu religion mixed together. Tilak says no. So the reformers pile on him, saying, you're a pedophile, you're a bad person, you do this, you do that. But Tilak says, look at all of my children. I have married them all after the age of 16, which is like the age of consent then.
Mhm.
So don't tell me if I'm a pedophile. I Tilak was such a great man that one of the social reformers, Rana Day, like Justice Rana Day, very famous guy in Bombay. So he and Tilak, they were like, see, until then politics was pretty more decent. So both of
Mhm.
them went to a Christian's place for tea. So someone got the news of it. So they started spreading that these people are converts now. Like you drank your tea at a non-Hindu's place. So Ranade, yeah, it used to be that orthodox. So Ranade actually had to do prashchit, prashchit like penance for drinking a tea at his summer's. Ranade, the social reformer, actually did penance for drinking tea. Tilak, the so-called conservative, said, "F.O. I am not doing any penance. Do what you have to." So he did not receive a Hindu girl. Like he did not. He was not. No Hindu girl went to cook for his daughter's wedding. It was a social boycott of sorts. So Tilak did not mind. Do what you have to. So these things that are happening. So these people are arguing for the role of the state, how important the state has to be. And
Hmm.
post 1900, unfortunately, as the World War One came, everyone started becoming more and more statist, and Congress took both our parts of the Indian National Congress, right? So the founders of the Indian National Congress were Dadabhai Naoroji, a classical liberal; Gopal
Hmm.
Krishna Gokhale, another classical liberal; Ranade, another classical liberal; Tiak, who himself was a conservative liberal, quote unquote, because like he was socially conservative. I don't see what is socially conservative here, and but
I
see, he
think
was
it
called.
basically would mean that I personally believe in these things and like, okay, relevant.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. So, but he was called a conservative liberal. So he was then, and later, like funny things that happened later. He was also accused of being a communist because, like after that, he was shipped off to 6 years in Mandalay for sedition. 6 years he was locked in. A 50-year-old man back in the time when he had diabetes, so it was basically a death sentence. But
It's
when he
okay.
came back. When he came back in 1914, he somehow survived, and then he became apparently softened a bit. He started arguing for home rule rather than complete independence. And then he started saying, uh, he even had to flirt with the idea of communism. He said, now revolutionary change is coming in. We need a revolutionary change. And after that, we can establish a for people's rule. But thankfully, unfortunately, here, he died pretty soon. He did not become a communist, card carrying communist member. But yeah,
And
then
was he talking about revolution in the communist revolution or just revolution in general?
freedom
Oh,
sense, revolution, freedom sense.
fine. But it's
That's
like
why,
the word revolution does not equate to communism. Come on,
yeah, exactly.
right?
So
Mhm. And also,
uh,
uh,
actually, when Tirak was shipped off to Mandalay, Lenin was one of the first people to campaign for him,
mhm,
saying, "You have arrested Lokmanya Tirak." And he was not wrong there, by the way. So Lenin said to the British government, "You have arrested him for like what? Saying speeches.
mhm,
What have you arrested him for? He hasn't raised bombs. He hasn't done anything, and just because of his speeches, you have arrested
yeah.
him." And
But then Lenin also, when
Lenin didn't kill
Lenin
the
did
people
exactly,
for less. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Lenin
Lenin,
didn't take his advice seriously. So
yeah.
basically, all these things happened, and post that Gandhi came into the political picture. Gandhi's
Mhm.
mentors also Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So Gandhi
I
is
want to
actually
ask you.
accused of being a hardcore conservative, which I agree with. So Gandhi
Mhm,
agrees with the caste system. Gandhi wants the caste system to remain in place, and Gandhi says Gandhi is against untouchability. By the way, untouchability and caste system are two different things.
yeah, yeah, I get it.
So untouchable, everyone like right from Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Gopal Agakar, everyone's against every major political player is against untouchability. But
Mhm.
caste system as a system of social organization, everyone agrees with. Some of them agree with.
But still,
Gopal Ganesh Agarkar says deal away with it. Gopal Ganesh Agarkar says I think it was done for as a system of social organization. I will give them the benefit of doubt. It may have been done for good things, but it has evolved into something ugly now. The Hindus are fighting amongst themselves. When the Muslims came, you were doing caste and caste. Literally, Gopal Ganesh Agarkar is saying that when this horde of barbarians came, you were doing caste, you were playing caste with each other when you're supposed to unify and fight. And
mhm,
now you say all this. It's a good thing that the British have come. Like he says sarcastically, it's a good thing that the British have come. Now let's resolve all social evils and let's become worth free. So let's become
mhm,
worth freedom. So
yeah. And
all these things.
just as a small pause here, I would like to make two comments and perhaps one question, right? So one would I would say is that, you know, like it's the march of history, right? The Indian independence movement begins as classical liberal, begins as quite libertarian
Yep, yep,
in a much
pretty
traditional sense. And then
yep,
over time, especially after the world wars, it switches. It
yep.
becomes socialism. It becomes far something far uglier and far worse, which is and our country has suffered for it,
True.
and the world has suffered for it because any uh, unfreedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere, right? And so that's something to lament, I would say. There could have been a different world, but once again, we live in Kant's world, so that's where it was going, right? So perhaps it was not preventable, but it's still a tragedy nonetheless. That even then, that the classical liberal elements of Indian independence movements did not survive till the day of independence. No
Continue.
problem. So
So yeah, we live in Kant's world.
yeah, and so perhaps it was not preventable that we go this way of from starting from classical liberalism, proto-libertarianism in our independence movement, and moving more and more towards the socialist Indian country that came about after independence, unfortunately. So that's just, I guess, a tragedy of history that almost all countries
True.
experience. We experienced it at our formative age, so that was not good at all, you know. And so, yeah, that's something I would lament. And the second thing I would say is that of the caste system, like I've often thought about it, you know, I have friends who have and whose ancestors have suffered through that. Not me, of course, because like I had the lucky privilege of being born into one of these high things, but who gives a shit now? I honestly do not give any shits, because you know, and but you could say that, okay, I can afford to not give shits because nobody gives me shit for it, right? But let's say someone who is born into another
See,
caste.
see,
You
what's
know?
happening? What's happening is Marxism's coming into the picture. You
Hmm.
see, as I just said, the strongest classical liberals and even conservative classical liberals were against these exploitative structures. So, but the issue happened was when Marxists came, they started weaponizing this for their political gain. So they started
Yeah, but
villainizing the upper caste.
that's
And
because it existed, right? That's because it
yeah,
existed. And so,
but no. The question is, see, the Marxist will exploit any inequality that's existing.
mhm.
So whenever a Marxist sees some sort of inequality, the Marxist will make it
Yeah, yeah,
into
yeah,
a
I
picture
agree.
of
So, like,
some expression. Yeah.
yeah, versus like we have like
And inequality is the problem is inequality is the rule of nature. Inequality
uh,
will exist of all time.
but yeah, you have to analyze, is it legitimate or illegitimate, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. This
and
was this by birth, and it hampered so many people. Like I can give an example. So Bajirao is going into northern campaigns, and north winter is very bad. So he's eating
mhm,
non-vegetarian food and drinking alcohol. And as he's a military man, what else is supposed to do? He's a
yeah.
Brahmin, and he's condemned. He's socially boycotted, and he's like, "You calling me anti-Hindu? I'm literally the prime minister of the Maratha state. You calling? How dare you?" And
You know,
it's very bad.
yeah, but moving on to that, I think you know it reminds me a lot about the if you have read Plato's Republic. It's the philosopher kings, which becomes the Brahmins in India, the auxiliaries, which becomes the Kshatriyas in India, and the everybody.
I don't see. No. It's not really like that. Brahmins, see, it all depend on power structure. It's not very rigid like that. So the
No, no,
Brahmin,
in Plato as well, it's not rigid. You could move from
uh,
one to another based upon your, thing. But like, it reminds me that the classification it's eerily Platonic. And of course, India is a very Platonic, not Platonic literally, but Platonic in form in its philosophy. So, you know, where is it? Is that where it's coming from? Is it that leftover collectivism? Because
yeah,
Mhm.
we see that, and it will go away. I think,
Yeah,
because it's
it is going on. Like you can see it, like in the modern capitalist India, like it is certainly idiotic to be a casteist, right? Like it's
yeah,
business
yeah.
wise idiotic.
In either ways, like in either, and people will call you stupid in either ways. Like I've seen people also who've just been like, "Hey, you're a Brahmin, you must be like fat or some shit," and like
Same thing.
either
You know?
way, it's like racism, regardless of who does it. And again, same, you're low caste and something. These are bullshit things. You
Yeah,
shouldn't believe in them. And they,
imagine exactly, like imagine if uh, how much I would have lost, right? In terms of the great friends that I have, the great people that I have
yeah.
met.
If I just decided, if I had these caste calculations, okay, I
Yeah,
can be friends with these, and
you're gone.
see,
Business wise, you're gone. Spiritually, you're gone. Romantic relationships wise, you're like limiting your
it's a
pool.
form of racism,
Friends,
right? So you shouldn't be like that, and then just live life, man. So, so
it's
that's a march of caste, and
profoundly
because
idiotic. It's profoundly idiotic.
racism is idiotic,
Yeah,
evil and stupidity and evil go together, hand in
yeah,
hand.
hmm yeah. So it's I do think like if someone really studies from, especially from an objectivist lens, they'll find the Platonic derivation of this. Like I'm pretty sure it's coming somewhere from Plato, like our Indian Plato's, right?
True.
Hmm. Yeah. So go ahead. You can continue.
So yeah, post that, post Tilak's death, post Agarkar's death, Congress really took a leftist turn because Gandhi had come from South Africa and Gandhi had flirted with communism too, but Gandhi I'm one of the very few who actually respect Gandhi, because
Mhm.
Gandhi actually helped a lot in certain respects when the Muslim League became so radical that said we are 13% of population, Hindus are 87%. So if you in a majority you will crush us. So we need 50% reservation in
So,
civil
yeah,
courts.
we can see the move towards collectivism, right? We can
Yeah.
see.
So exactly. So Gandhi said no, and we brought forward the partition. And
Mhm.
funny enough, Tilak, who's called the classic conservative liberal,
Mhm.
said, I agree for 33% of reservation. I don't care. I'll agree 33% of reservation. But we must defeat the British. Because why? Because his aim is to defeat the British. Agarkar, whose aim is social revolution, who wants the classical liberal in liberation, he says, at a max, I'll give you 13%.
Mhm.
You're 13% right. At max, I'll arrange for 13% reservation. Otherwise, I don't care. Do what you have to do. Agarkar, who's a so-called social liberal, is denying all these things, and Tilak, who's a so-called conservative liberal, is accepting 33% reservation. You see the power dynamics at picture here, because Agarkar's aim is social liberation first, and he unfortunately, like, throughout my childhood, I was a big fan of Tilak, and I still am. Like, of course, I don't see a duality here, but I have to agree that because Agar, what we would have said, if you would move closer to Agarkar, if you would have internally reformed Hinduism or Hindu society, and we would have made it socially resilient, if you would have given individual the more power, and if you would have argued for entrepreneurship and trade and all these things, we would have gotten independence at 10 years later at max. Because see, colonialism is not sustainable,
Yeah.
but we would have been far better than we were under this socialist nonsense idiotic rule.
And
And that's
there is a very good argument to be made that we're not really even like technically did we even get independence? Because what the hell did we do? We
yeah,
control.
exactly.
Yeah.
According to me, our actual independence was 1991, when we actually liberalized.
Yeah.
Even that was not completely perfect, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
actually
Even now,
independence.
if you look at it, right, like it's like we have copied and pasted literally whatever the British were saying, regardless, you know, like there is again a trichotomy here.
Our gun laws are British. Our sedition
Yes,
laws are British. Our free speech laws are British. What exactly is Indian here?
exactly. Like nothing really, and that's another thing. Like there is a trichotomy here. If you know, like the objective is there. We're big fans of trichotomies, right?
Yeah.
So so there's the argument that which Nehru did, which is that everything the British did are good, so we're just gonna control C, control V, Clement Attlee's government over here, and we are gonna gonna live in a Fabian socialist utopia forever, right? And then there is the other end of it, which is that everything the British have ever done is bad, and so we will reject
The West
everything,
is bad. The West
right?
is bad. European society is
Yeah,
bad. Everything
and
is
so
bad.
we're going back to the mystic muck that Rand describes, right? And there is a third argument here, which is that you could use here what's given
This
here,
yeah.
right?
This
And
great thing that you have. The greatest
what's
thing that
good
you
here, what's good here, you pick both and you create something good, right? And it's like the geography of the origination of these ideas really doesn't matter. Their validity does, right? And you take that. And so take the example of the gun laws, which I like to bring up. In like 1911, right? They curtailed the gun laws. They curtailed the right
very
to
good.
bear arms. Mhm.
The epitome of non-violence. N.K.
Yes,
Gandhi is saying the British have disarmed us. So you
yes,
can only imagine how strong uh, the curtailing was.
yeah,
And funnily enough, in the constitution, like the every proposed constitution had gun arms act in it. Like we there was actually a provision for giving arms, and it was rolled back by Nehru and his gang because of these things, because of his socialist rule. What will happen if anarchy spreads and some nonsense? So, so so
so
yeah,
yeah,
that's the reason he did that.
and so it's like when the British did it, when the British actually took away our right to bear arms. They were all up in arms about it. Like they're not literally arms because they didn't have any anymore.
Everyone opposed it, right? So
Yeah,
even Nehru himself, I think, opposed it at one point in time. But that's the reason, right? Because the British are foreigners, we are Indians. Let the arms be with us. Let the monopoly of foreigners be ours. Some nonsense.
yeah. And
And
so
and they
that's the
do
thing.
it. They did it quoting the names of such people who would have not even spat in their face. If they would have seen what was happening. Like
Exactly.
they, you quote Bhagat Singh and then you say no, no, arms act is bad, and then you like arms rights are bad. Doesn't make sense.
And like that's the dichotomy, that's the contradiction here. That if you are like, if you're truly anti-colonial, right? Then restore the right to bear arms to Indian people, or don't pretend, right? Like
They
don't
don't. They
pretend.
don't. They don't. And what are
It's
these
the
seditions? What are these sedition acts that are taken in place? Right.
Yeah. Look, they have kept the goddamn governing structure. They've just replaced white guys with brown guys. It's still the goddamn governing structure.
And it's even worse. Like it's weaponized against communities they think are bad. Like you
Mhm.
see how secularism is butchered, how social harmony is butchered, how these things are butchered, and then they call it the same. Like you do tax Hindu temples and then you call it secularism. How is it secularism?
It's not like that's the thing. It's not, and so like you're not really, liberated. You have put under new management.
Yep.
Like the Indian
Yeah.
people are not really free. They're
The
just
whip
being,
has changed its hands. You can
the
say
whip
put
has
it
changed
over.
its hands, right? Between like white guys to brown guys, and like nothing really has much
So yeah,
changed.
that is where things are. But after liberalization, when new ideas are ushered in even more, it's
Mhm.
much better. And I'm
And
very hopeful about
yeah,
how things go away.
and Indian libertarians are going to take it even further. We're going to bring about
Yeah.
the true liberalization, the true freedom, right?
Yeah, liberalization 2.0. True.
Liberalization 2.0, and hopefully 3.0 and 4.0.
Yeah, yeah. Things will think these rounds must happen. The more the deregulation, the better. Things must be deregulated.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the state of the history. And I'd also like to introduce one person to you. So
Mhm.
during the Maratha Empire, there are many chronicles, but Shivaji Maharaj visited one particular saint, and so that saint is again an Advaitin. So
Mhm.
that saint says again the same. There's one entity, Brahman, and then you have to reach it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That entity believes in God. That entity says Rama is the entity. That saint says Rama is the blessed, and so on and so forth. But when that same saint starts talking about politics, he says, "Anek lok mirvave, gather as many as you can, uh, make them of one thought, and descend on the barbarians. Preserve what you have, expand even more, and implant the flag of Maharashtra everywhere." He also says, he literally says, the maintain what is yours, let people do their what is their own, and find your path to liberation. So in
Mhm.
politics he's basically like he is arguing for freedom for everyone. He's like, as long as people don't, as long as these people are not barbarian and they are not damaging you, I don't care if they believe in Gita, Quran, blah blah blah. These are the paths to liberation, moksha. You can do what you have to, let the other do what he has to. But the minute he puts his foot on your neck, don't spare the shit out of him, like kill him. And that's Samarth Ramdas, the saint, the arch saint of these people. Now you see a very funny pattern. The guy who says the world is illusion, the guy who believes in that, is arguing for this worldly actions. And after Shivaji's death, he's written a letter to Sambhaji
Mhm.
saying, remember your father, remember your father's courage, remember your father's action, remember a huge lore. And towards his end, he says, uh, live by the sword of valor in this world and the next. So he's actually given importance to this world. And towards his end, he says, do something greater than your father and then only call yourself a man. So he's basically challenges masculinity too. So this is this saying. So that's the dichotomy I had to say, that this Advaitin, people who say the world is material, is actually given the people who say this material world is illusionary. He's actually given importance to this world and is campaigning for what is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
So that's why the Advaitins are in future. There's even a claim that this Samad Ramdas is actually a social reformer, not social reformer, a social catalyst, and not really a religious person. He's only brought religion so people will actually pay attention to it, because this being the media is. There's actually an accusation like that. And I really hope in my heart of hearts for it to be true. but you understand, right? So these are the saints that come. So you will see, basically, if I were to sum up individual and Indian history, the individual, like in any other civilization, was relegated to the backseat compared to the state. But as I have seen, the individual did exist, the individual was valued, and the individual, for the paths of liberation like bhakti, it's an individual affair.
Yeah.
Liberation is an individual affair. Meditation is an individual affair, and these were given a lot of importance. Your connection to God was an individual affair. So these individual did had a standing in civilization. But the problem is, because Hindu civilization is an umbrella term, is a big tent, quote unquote, it has so many competing ideologies. So the ideology with the sword won, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's my two piece on what individualism and history ended up being.
Yeah. And I would be making a couple of remarks here. One would be that, I've seen this, like, I have this idea, as long as a thinker is considering this world and they're operating within the logic of this world, they're operating within reality.
They
There's
will
going
end
to
up being like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There will be a convergence of ideas, right? There will be a like the many different thoughts have approached the non-aggression ethic, and they have come from various different places. But as long when you're talking about something as visible as politics, when you're talking about something as visible as conflicts, right? You're gonna end up approaching non-aggression if you are honest, if you're honest in your thinking. And of course, like if you have screwed up epistemology, it will make it harder for you, but it's not impossible to approach it.
True. As long as you believe life on this world is worth living, you
Yeah,
will end up being very close to Aristotle. Truly.
yeah, yeah. And especially, I've seen it in the political realm that non-aggression can be approached, is approached often by various different ideologies. And of course, I believe the proper grounding of non-aggression is Aristotelianism. But many others have approached it as well, and in doing so, they have that Aristotelian element in them, right? They're
True.
not they're not they become this worldly in those areas of their philosophy, and they have to come to logic, they have to come to reason that in approaching this idea, and it's very important. And I think that was a very good talk, and
Yeah, really. I had a great time, man.
yeah, me as well. Let me stop recording.